Have you ever wondered what makes a man go from intrigued to absolutely captivated, from casual interest to the point where he's completely consumed by thoughts of you? If you've ever felt frustrated by modern dating, second-guessing your every move, or wondering why he's not as invested as you are, this is for you. Too often we get caught up in outdated advice or focus on superficial tactics that miss the mark. But what if the key to unlocking his devotion wasn't about changing him, but transforming your approach? Here's the hard truth. Men fall in love not because of who you pretend to be, but because of the energy you radiate and the boundaries you set. In this video, we're diving deep into 7 transformative acts that don't just spark attraction, they make him crave you. These aren't shallow tricks or games, these are timeless principles rooted in Stoicism and dark Stoic psychology, designed to help you master the art of emotional connection and self-respect. Imagine stepping into your power and becoming the woman he can't stop thinking about, not because you're chasing him, but because you've become irresistible. That's what we're going to uncover today. And here's the best part. These acts don't just make him fall for you, they make you fall in love with yourself too. Ready to get started? Let's begin with the first powerful shift that will transform how men see you. 1, be comfortable walking away. Here's a question for you. Have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have because you were afraid of being alone? Maybe you've put up with behavior that made you feel unappreciated or even disrespected because you want to lose them. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. But here's the truth. The moment you start fearing the end of a relationship, you lose your power. Men are hardwired to admire strength and independence. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you're not afraid to walk away when he isn't meeting your standards. This isn't just about dating. This is Stoicism in action. It's the art of staying grounded in your self-worth regardless of how others behave. Pick this. You're with a man who's been distant or inconsistent. Instead of clinging to the hope that he'll change, you confidently let him know your expectations. You say, I value honesty, effort, and it feels like we're not on the same page. I'm willing to walk away if that's what's best for both of us. Do you feel the power in those words? You're not begging for him to stay. You're showing him that your happiness doesn't depend on his validation. When you master this act, something incredible happens. Men start to see you differently. They begin to view your time, attention, and presence as privileges, not guarantees. And here's the kicker. When you're willing to leave, they're far more likely to step up. Why? Because humans by nature chase what they fear losing. It's one of the core principles of dark Stoic psychology. People value you what feels scarce. But let me ask you this. Are you ready to put yourself first? To stop tolerating less than you deserve? This doesn't mean walking away at the first sign of trouble. It means setting clear boundaries and following through when those boundaries are crossed. Remember, relationships are about mutual respect. If you halfway walking away isn't giving up, it's making space for something better. Let's reflect for a moment. Think back to a time when you stayed in a situation that didn't serve you. How did it make you feel? Did you lose a little bit of your confidence each time you compromised on what you deserved? Now imagine how empowering it would feel to say, I'm worth more than this, and act accordingly. Walking away isn't just an act of courage, it's an act of self-love. It's saying, I trust myself to make decisions that honor my worth, and guess what? Men respect women who respect themselves. They're drawn to the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need them but chooses to be with them. So what does this look like in practice? First, you need to identify your deal breakers. Is it a lack of effort, dishonesty, emotional unavailability, whatever it is? Be clear about it in your own mind, then communicate those boundaries calmly, confidently. If he crosses them, don't just threaten to leave. Be prepared to follow through. This isn't about punishing him. It's about honoring yourself. Here's the beauty of this act. Even if he doesn't step up, you're still winning. Why? Because you've freed yourself to attract someone who will, someone who sees your value and treats you accordingly. And that's what makes this first act so transformative. It's not just about making him fall in love with you. It's about falling in love with yourself before we move on to the next act. Let me leave you with this question. What's one area in your life where you've been afraid to set boundaries? How would it feel to reclaim your power in that area? 2, Value your attention. Let me ask you this. How many times have you felt like you're giving everything in a relationship, your time, your energy, your emotional support, only to feel like you're being taken for granted? Maybe you're the one always initiating plans, checking in, or keeping the connection alive. It's exhausting, isn't it? And deep down, it makes you wonder, why isn't he matching my effort? Here's the answer. When you give your attention away too freely, it loses its value. Think about it. If you had unlimited access to something, would you cherish it as much as something rare and special? Probably not. That's why one of the most powerful acts you can embrace is learning to value your attention. Men are naturally drawn to women who command respect, not by demanding it, but by living in a way that shows their time is precious. When you prioritize yourself, your goals and your passions, you send a clear message. My attention is a privilege, not a guarantee. Now let's break this down. What does it look like to value your attention first? It means focusing on your life. Ask yourself, what lights you up? What are the goals, hobbies, or dreams you've been putting off because you've been so focused on him? When you channel your energy into building a life you love, something incredible happens. You naturally become magnetic. Your energy shifts from seeking validation to radiating confidence. And trust me, men feel that difference. But valuing your attention isn't just about self-growth, it's about how you interact with him too. Here's where dark stoic psychology comes into play. When you're not always readily available, you create a sense of intrigue. Men start to wonder, why isn't she texting me back immediately? What's she up to this? It isn't about playing games. It's about showing that you have a rich, full life that doesn't revolve around him. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in the early stages of dating. He texts you, and instead of dropping everything to reply, you take your time. Maybe you're at the gym, hanging out with friends, or working on a passion project. When you finally respond, it's warm and engaging, but you're not overcompensating or trying too hard. That simple act of delayed gratification creates an air of mystery. He'll start to see you as someone who's confident, independent, and worthy, pursuing, here's the thing, valuing your attention doesn't mean being cold or distant. It's about balance. Show interest, but don't overinvestment. But by how you value yourself, by focusing on what you can control, your time, your boundaries, and your energy, you become unshakable, and that inner strength is irresistible. But let's be real, valuing your attention takes practice. It requires breaking old habits and learning to say no to behaviors that drain you. So here's a challenge for you. The next time you feel tempted to overextend yourself, pause and ask, is this person earning my attention? If the answer is no, it's time to pull back and refocus on what truly matters. Now, let's make this fun. If you're loving this video so far, and be ready to start valuing your attention, like this video and comment number 1 below. Your engagement means the world to me, and it helps us build this incredible community of high-value women. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey of empowerment and transformation. Let's keep the momentum going. Are you ready for the next act? Stay tuned because it only gets better from here. 3, emotional independence. Have you ever found yourself waiting by your phone, hoping for a text, a call, or some kind of reassurance from him? Have you ever felt like your mood for the entire day depended on how much attention he gave you? If so, you're not alone. Many women fall into the trap of emotional dependence without even realizing it. But here's the truth. Nothing pushes a man away faster than feeling like he's responsible for your happiness. And nothing draws him closer than a woman who is her own source of joy. Emotional independence isn't just a buzzword, it's a lifestyle. It's the art of mastering your emotions. So your peace and happiness aren't tied to his actions. And let's be honest, isn't that what we all truly want? A relationship where love is freely given, not something we desperately cling to out of fear or insecurity. The concept of emotional independence is rooted in Stoicism, which teaches us that our happiness should come from within, not from external factors. When you embody this philosophy, you become someone who radiates confidence and become a woman who doesn't need a man to feel whole, but who chooses to share her life with him because it enhances her already fulfilling existence. That kind of energy is irresistible. Let's take a moment to reflect. Think about a time when you felt overly dependent on someone's attention or approval. How did it make you feel when they didn't give you what you craved? Did it leave you anxious, doubting yourself, or even questioning your worth? Now, imagine the opposite. Imagine being so grounded in your self-worth that his attention is just the icing on the cake, not the cake itself. How freeing would that feel to cultivate emotional independence? Start by becoming aware of your emotional triggers. Do you notice a wave of anxiety when he doesn't respond to a text right away? Do you feel your mood dip if he seems distant instead of spiraling into self-doubt? Pause and remind self, his actions don't define my worth. I am enough no matter what. This is where dark Stoic psychology comes into play. By mastering your emotional responses, you take back the power you may have unknowingly given away. Think of it like this. Every time you allow someone else's actions to dictate your feelings, you're handing over control of your inner peace. But when you learn to remain calm and centered no matter what, you send a powerful message. I am the master of my emotions. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're dating someone and you've had an amazing time together. Then out of nowhere, he pulls back. He texts less, seems distracted, or doesn't make as much effort. The emotionally dependent version of you might panic, wondering, what did I do wrong? How can I fix this? But the emotionally independent version of you responds differently. Instead of chasing him or seeking reassurance, you simply mirror his energy. You continue living your life, focusing on your goals and passions you show him without saying a word, that your world doesn't revolve around him, what happens next. 9 times out of 10, he comes back. Why? Because emotional independence is magnetic. It shows him that you're confident, secure, and not easily shaken. Men respect and admire women who can hold their own emotionally. And if he doesn't come back, that's okay too, because an emotionally independent woman knows that her peace isn't negotiable and that the right person will value her strength. But emotional independence isn't just about how you interact with him. It's also about how you take care of yourself. Ask yourself, what brings BRS me joy outside of my relationships? Maybe it's a hobby you've been neglecting, friendships you've let drift, or a self-care routine you've put on the back burner. Reclaim those parts of your life. When you're fulfilled on your own, you don't need to cling to anyone else for happiness. And let's not forget the importance of emotional resilience. Life is unpredictable, and relationships can have their ups and downs. Emotional independence means being able to navigate those challenges with grace without letting them derail your sense of self. It's about finding strength in the chaos and trusting that you can handle whatever comes your way. Let me leave you with this emotional. Independence isn't about being distant or detached. It's about showing up as your whole authentic self without placing the burden of your happiness on anyone else. When you embrace this act, you'll find that not only do you attract healthier, more fulfilling relationships, but you also discover a deeper sense of peace and confidence within yourself. Are you ready to reclaim your emotional power? Let's keep this journey going, because the next act will take your self-worth to an even higher level 4. Give him space to chase. Have you ever felt like you're doing all the heavy lifting in a relationship? Maybe you're always the one to text first, plan the dates, or keep the conversation's alive. It's exhausting, isn't it? But here's the truth. Most women don't realize men need space to chase. It's not because they're disinterested or lazy. It's because desire is fueled by the effort they invest. And if you're always the one doing the chasing, you're robbing him of the chance to miss you. Here's something powerful to consider. Relationships thrive on balance. If one person is constantly pouring energy into the connection while the other coasts along, the dynamic becomes unbalanced and resentment can creep in. But when both people invest equally, the connection deepens. That's why one of the most irresistible acts you can embrace is giving him the space to step up and pursue you. Let's explore why this works. Human nature is wired to value what requires effort. Think about it. Have you ever worked hard for something like a promotion or a fitness goal? How much more satisfying was it because you earned it rather than having it handed to you? The same principle applies to relationships. Men want to feel like they've earned your attention, not like it's theirs for free. But here's the catch giving. Space doesn't mean ignoring him or playing hard to get. It's about creating a dynamic where he has the opportunity to invest in you when when he's the one reaching out, planning dates, or making an effort to connect. He feels a sense of accomplishment. He starts to see you as someone worth working for, someone special, and that's when true desire begins to grow. Let's put this into perspective with a simple scenario. Imagine you've just started dating someone new. The chemistry is great, but you notice that you're always the first to text or initiate plans. Instead of continuing that pattern, take a step back, give him the chance to notice your absence and reach out. Maybe it's a few hours, maybe it's a day. When he finally does text, respond warmly, but resist the urge to overcompensate or overwhelm him with enthusiasm. This isn't about being cold. It's about showing that you're confident enough to let things unfold naturally. This concept is deeply rooted in dark Stoic psychology, the idea that scarcity creates value when you're not always readily available. He begins to see your time and attention as something precious, and the more he values it, the harder he'll work to keep it. It's a subtle but powerful shift that can transform the way he sees you. But here's a question. Do you trust him enough to give him space? Sometimes the fear of losing someone can make us cling tighter, even when we know it's counterproductive. That fear often stems from a lack of confidence in our own worth. But when you embrace Stoicism and ground yourself in your value, you realize that giving space isn't a risk, it's a strategy. It's a way to allow the relationship to breathe and grow rather than suffocating it with constant attention. So how do you put this into practice? Start by becoming more aware of how often you're initiating contact if you're always the one texting first. Challenge yourself to wait and see if he reaches out. If you're the one always suggesting plans, take a step back and let him take the lead. This doesn't mean you stop engaging altogether. It's about creating balance and allowing him to show his interest. But what happens if he doesn't step up? If you give him space and he fades away, that tells you completely immersed in something that brought you joy. Think about it. The moments when you were so consumed by a passion, a project, or even a quiet walk in nature that you forgot to check your phone, forgot to wonder if he was thinking about you. Those moments are powerful because they remind you of one undeniable truth. You are the main character of your own story. Men are naturally drawn to women who exude a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Why? Because confidence, passion, and independence are magnetic. A woman who celebrates her life, who is deeply in love with herself and the world she's creating, doesn't just attract a man's attention, she captivates his soul. She becomes someone he admires, respects, and ultimately can't resist. But here's where many women go wrong. In the excitement of a new relationship or the hope of deepening an existing one, they lose sight of their own lives. They start prioritizing his interest over theirs, shifting their schedules to accommodate him, and slowly letting go of the hobbies, friends, and goals that once made them feel alive. It's a subtle shift, but over time it sends a clear message. My happiness depends on you, and that, my dear, is a surefire way to lose both yourself and his admiration. So how do you avoid this trap? By making the conscious choice to celebrate your own life regardless of who is or isn't part of it. This isn't just about keeping yourself busy. It's about creating a life so rich and fulfilling that you become magnetic without even trying. It's about embodying the principles of Stoicism, which remind us to find joy and peace within ourselves, not in external circumstances. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up in the morning and feeling genuinely excited about your day, not because he texted you good morning, but because you're working on a project that lights you up. Maybe you've planned lunch with a friend who always makes you laugh, or you're heading to a dance class where you can lose yourself in the music. You're not sitting around waiting for his attention. You're out there living your life to the fullest. What happens when you live this way? Men notice. They see your energy, your zest for life, and your ability to create happiness on your own terms. And that makes them want to be part of your world, not because they feel obligated, but because they're inspired by your light. But celebrating your life isn't just about attracting him. It's about nurturing yourself. It's about building a foundation of joy and self-love that no relationship can shake. When you're deeply connected to your passions and purpose, you become unshakable. You no longer seek validation or cling to someone else to fill the gaps in your life because you've already filled them yourself. This is where dark Stoic psychology plays a crucial role. By focusing on your inner world, your thoughts, emotions, and actions, you reclaim your power. You learn to find fulfillment in the things you can control, like your personal growth, creativity, and the relationships that truly matter. And the more you celebrate your own life, the more irresistible you become, not just to him, but to everyone around you. Here's an example. A friend of mine, Emily, used to define her happiness by the relationship she was in. When things were good, she felt on top of the world. But when her boyfriend pulled away or got busy with her, she spiraled into doubt and insecurity. It wasn't until she started focusing on her own life, launching a small business, reconnecting with old friends, and exploring new hobbies that everything changed. Not only did she feel happier and more confident, but her boyfriend also became more attentive and affectionate. Why? Because Emily's energy shifted. She stopped seeking validation and started radiating it. But let's not sugarcoat it. Celebrating your life takes effort. It requires setting boundaries, saying no to things that don't align with your values, and carving out time for the things that matter most to you. It might mean revisiting passions you've neglected or trying something new that pushes you out of your comfort zone. And yes, it might even mean facing the fear of being alone, so you can rediscover what truly makes you happy. Here's a question to ponder. If you removed your romantic relationships from the equation, what would bring you joy? What would give your life meaning? Write those things down. Make a list of the activities, people, and dreams that light you up, and commit to prioritizing them. Not for him, not to impress anyone else, but for you. When you celebrate your own life, you send a powerful message. I am whole. I am enough, and I am worthy of love, not because of what I do for others, but because of who I am. That kind of confidence is rare, and men can't help but be drawn to it. More importantly, it transforms how you see yourself, turning you into the best version of you. Remember, your life is a masterpiece in progress. Don't let anyone or any relationship dull your spark. Embrace your passions, nurture your dreams, and celebrate every moment of the incredible journey you're on. That's the kind of energy that not only attracts love, but sustains it. And trust me, when he sees you living your life with this kind of joy and purpose, he'll do everything in his power to be part of it. 6, set boundaries and keep them. Let's talk about something powerful yet often overlooked: boundaries. When was the last time you set a boundary in a relationship and stuck to it? Be honest. Have you ever bent your standards just to keep the peace or avoid losing someone? If so, you're not alone. But here's the truth that might surprise you. Boundaries don't push men away. They pull the right men closer. Boundaries aren't walls, they're signposts. They say, this is what I value and this is how I expect to be treated. And when you enforce them, you're not just protecting yourself. You're showing him that you're a woman who respects her own worth. Men are wired to admire strength and clarity, and nothing demonstrates that better than a woman who knows her limits and doesn't compromise them for anyone. But let's address the elephant in the room. Many women fear that setting boundaries will make them seem too difficult or high maintenance. Have you ever thought, if I speak up, he might think I'm being demanding and bully? He'll leave. It's a common worry. But the reality is this: the right man will respect your boundaries, not resent them. In fact, boundaries are what make a relationship thrive because they create a foundation of mutual respect. Let's dive into why boundaries are so essential at their core. Boundaries are about protecting your emotional well-being. They prevent you from overextending yourself and ensure that you're giving and receiving in equal measure. When you set a boundary, you're saying, I value myself and I expect you to value me too. That's not selfish, that's healthy. Here's an example. Imagine you're seeing someone who constantly cancels plans last minute. Maybe he has a good excuse, or maybe he doesn't. Either way, it leaves you feeling frustrated and unimportant. And the old version of you might shrug it off, hoping he'll change. But the high value version of you sets a boundary. You calmly tell him, I understand things come up, but I need reliability in a relationship. If you can't commit to plans, it's better to let me know upfront what happens next. One of two things: either he steps up and starts respecting your time, or he doesn't and you walk away. Either outcome is a win because you're prioritizing your self-respect over his approval. This is where dark Stoic psychology shines. By staying firm in your boundaries, you create a dynamic where he has to rise to meet your standards or risk losing you. But let's be real, setting boundaries isn't always easy. It takes courage to say no, especially if you're used to being a people pleaser. It can feel comfortable, even scary, to risk conflict or rejection. But let me ask you this. What's scarier, momentary discomfort or spending your life in a relationship where you feel unseen and undervalued? Boundaries are also deeply tied to Stoicism, which teaches us to focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. You can't control how someone reacts to your boundaries, but you can control whether or not you enforce them. By doing so, you're taking responsibility for your happiness and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. So how do you start setting boundaries in your relationships? Begin by identifying your non-negotiables. What behaviors or situations make you feel disrespected or drained? Write them down and get crystal clear on what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not. Then practice communicating those boundaries calmly and confidently. Use I statements like, I feel disrespected when plans are Canelo last minute, rather than accusatory language like, you never keep your word. But here's the key. Boundaries only work if you enforce them. If you set a limit and then let him cross it without consequence, you're sending the message that your words don't carry weight. Consistency is everything. When you follow through, you show him and yourself, but you mean what you say. Let me share a story about a client of mine, Rachel. She was in a relationship with a man who often made hurtful jokes at her expense. At first, she laughed it off, thinking it was harmless, but over time, those jokes chipped away at her confidence. When she finally confronted him, she said, I don't find those comments funny, and I won't tolerate being disrespected. His response? He apologized and stopped the behavior immediately. Why? Because Rachel's boundary made it clear that she valued herself, and he valued her more because of it. Boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself. They're about setting the tone for how others treat you. And here's the best part. When you enforce your boundaries, you inspire him to step into his best self. Men respect women who challenge them to be better, and boundaries are one of the most effective ways to do that if this idea resonates with you. And you're ready to start setting boundaries in your own life, like this video and comment number 1 below. Your engagement helps us reach more women who need this message, and it keeps this empowering conversation going. And if you're not already part of this community, hit that subscribe button to join us on this journey of self-discovery and field transformation. You've already come so far. Let's dive into the final act where everything comes together in the most powerful way yet. Stay with me because you don't want to miss it. 7, embrace mystery. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you left a man wanting more? Not in a manipulative way, but in a way that sparked his curiosity, fueled his desire, and made him eager to uncover the layers of who you are. If you're always an open book, laying all your emotions, intentions, and stories out on the table, you might unintentionally be missing out on one of the most powerful tools of attraction, mystery. Men are inherently drawn to the unknown. It's not because they want games or confusion, but because curiosity is a natural driver of emotional investment. When there's a sense of discovery, they're motivated to learn more, to connect on a deeper level, and to win the privilege of truly knowing you. That's why the art of embracing mystery is so transformative. It doesn't just attract him, it keeps him captivated. But here's the thing, mystery isn't about withholding or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about pacing. It's about letting him peel back the layers of your personality, your passions and your emotions over time, rather than handing him the entire story up front. Think of it like reading a great novel. Would it be as satisfying if the ending was revealed on page 1? Of course not. The intrigue comes from the journey, the twists, turns, and gradual unfolding of the plot. Here's how you can cultivate that same intrigue in your relationships. First, resist the urge to overshare too soon. It's natural to want to bond over shared experiences, but when you give away too much too fast, it can overwhelm the connection. Instead, let him ask questions. Give him the chance to earn your trust and draw out your stories. When he works for your openness, he values it more. For example, imagine you're on a date and he asks about your past relationships instead of diving into a detailed explanation. Keep it simple. I've learned a lot from them, and I'm grateful for those experiences. That one statement shows that you're mature, reflective, and emotionally grounded. without giving away every detail. And guess what? It leaves him wanting to know more. This principle is rooted in dark Stoic psychology, which emphasizes control over how much of yourself you reveal. When you're selective about what you share, and when you maintain control over the dynamic, you're not withholding out of fear or manipulation. You're creating space for intrigue and emotional investment. And when he feels like there's always more to discover about you, he stays engaged. But mystery isn't just about what you say, it's about how you live. Men are drawn to women who have rich, independent lives filled with passions and interests that aren't solely tied to him. When you're busy building your career, pursuing your hobbies, and nurturing your friendships, you naturally exude an air of intrigue. He'll start to wonder, what does she think about? What's she working on? What inspires her? And the more he wonders, the more he's drawn to you. This is where Stoicism comes into play. By focusing on your own growth and happiness, you create a sense of emotional self-sufficiency. That's deeply attractive. You're not leaning on him to fill your life. You're inviting him to be part of it. That subtle shift changes everything. Let me share a quick story. A woman I know, Mia, was constantly over-explained herself in relationships. She felt the need to prove her worth by sharing every detail about her life, her dreams, and even her fears. While her intentions were good, she noticed that men often seemed less engaged over time. One day, she decided to take a different approach. Instead of explaining herself, she started asking thought questions, listening more, and sharing her thoughts in measured doses. The result, men began opening up to her, leaning in and valuing her presence more than ever by embracing mystery. Mia transformed her dating life, and our confidence skyrocketed. But let's address the elephant in the room. Doesn't embracing mystery mean you're holding back who you truly are? Not at all. It's not about hiding, it's about inviting. You're still authentic, still yourself, but you're letting the connection unfold naturally rather than rushing to reveal everything at once. This creates a dynamic where both of you feel excited and engaged rather than overwhelmed or bored. Here's a practical way to put this into action the next time you're tempted to send a long, detailed text explaining your feelings or plans. Pause. Ask yourself, am I leaving room for curiosity instead? Send a concise, thoughtful message that leaves space for him to engage. Let the conversation flow naturally rather than trying to control it. You'll be amazed at how this small shift can change the energy between you. Embracing mystery is about mastering the balance of openness and restraint. It's about showing enough to pique his interest while holding enough back to keep him intrigued. When you live with this balance, you create a sense of depth that men find irresistible. You become the woman who isn't just memorable, but unforgettable. And here's the best part. Mystery isn't something you create, it's something you are. Every woman has layers of complexity, strength, and beauty waiting to be discovered, but by pacing how you reveal those layers, you give him the gift of truly earning your trust and affection. And when he earns it, he cherishes it. Remember, attraction isn't about giving away the ending, it's about letting him enjoy the story. Embrace your mystery and watch as he leans in, captivated by the journey of discovering you. That's the power of intrigue, and it's a power you've always had. Use it wisely. You've made it to the end of this journey, and now you hold the keys to transforming not just how men see you, but how you see yourself. These 7 acts, being comfortable walking away, valuing your attention, cultivating emotional independence, giving him space to chase, celebrating your own life, setting boundaries, and embracing mystery, aren't about playing games or following some outdated dating script. We've all met them, the ones who twist the truth, drain your energy, and make you question your own reality. The ones who leave you emotionally exhausted after every interaction. Maybe they're a coworker, a family member, or someone you once considered a friend. No matter who they are, the effect is the same. Toxicity spreads like wildfire. And if we're not careful, we get burned. But here's the good news. While we can't always avoid toxic people, we can decide how we engage with them. We get to choose how much space they take up in our lives. So let's talk about 7 ways to keep your peace when you're dealing with toxic people. Let's talk about boundaries. The invisible lines we draw to protect our energy, our time, and our emotional well-being. For some reason, setting boundaries has been painted as selfish, rude, or even unkind. But the truth is, boundaries are an act of love. Love, not just for ourselves, but for others too. Here's the hard part. Many of us struggle with boundaries because we've been conditioned to believe that saying no makes us a bad person from a young age. We're taught to be agreeable, to keep the peace, to put others' needs before our own. And while kindness, generosity are beautiful qualities, they should never come at the expense of our mental and emotional health. So what happens? When we don't set boundaries, we overextend ourselves. We say yes when we want to say no. We allow people to take more from us than we have to give. We absorb other people's problems, emotions, and chaos until we're left drained and resentful. And then when we finally break down, we wonder what went wrong. The truth is, boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They are gates meant to protect what's valuable inside. They communicate, this is what I'm okay with and this is what I'm not okay with. They allow us to show up fully without the exhaustion and resentment that comes from overgiving. Setting boundaries starts with clarity. You can't enforce boundaries if you're not clear on what they are. So ask yourself, what makes me feel drained? What behaviors cross the line for me? Where do I tend to overextend myself? And why? Who in my life respects my time and energy and who repeatedly takes advantage of it? Once you have clarity, you can start setting boundaries in small, everyday ways. Maybe it's letting a friend know you can't always be available at their convenience. Maybe it's telling a coworker that you won't be answering work emails after hours. Maybe it's not engaging with a family member who thrives on negativity and drama. Boundaries without explanation or apology. One of the biggest mistakes we make when setting boundaries is feeling like we owe people an explanation. We don't. No is a complete sentence. Think about the times you've said, I'm so sorry, but I can't. Or I really wish I could, but I have too much on my plate. What if? If instead you just said, that doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for that. No guilt, no over-explaining, just a simple, firm statement. When we explain too much, we invite negotiation. Toxic people will find loopholes. They'll push, they'll test, they'll guilt trip. But when you stand firm in your boundaries without justification, you make it clear that your well-being is not up for debate. Expect pushback and hold your ground. Here's the thing about boundaries. The people who get upset about them are usually the ones who benefited from you not having any. When you start enforcing boundaries, expect resistance, expect guilt trips, expect people to say you've changed. But here's the truth. They only say that because you're no longer tolerating what you once did. Some people won't like your boundaries, and that's okay. It's not your job to make everyone comfortable at your own expense. Your job is to protect your peace. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. The strongest, healthiest relationships are built on mutual respect. When you set boundaries, you teach people how to treat you. And the ones who truly love and respect you, they'll adjust. The ones who don't, they'll resist. And that tells you everything you need to know about the role they should or shouldn't play in your life. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to protect your energy. And most of all, you are allowed to say no without guilt, without apology, and without explaining yourself. Toxic people thrive on one thing: reactions. They push buttons, create chaos, and stir up drama, not because they want resolution, but because they want control. The moment you engage in their game, you hand them power over your emotions. That's why one of the smartest things you can do when dealing with toxic people is this: don't take the bait. Why toxic people want a reaction? Toxic people are like fishermen. They dangle the bait. Passive-aggressive comments, manipulation, guilt tripping, or outright provocation, just waiting for you to bite. And when you do, they reel you in. If you get defensive, they've won. They'll twist your words, gaslight you, and make you feel like you're overreacting. If you lash out, they've won. Now they can play the victim and make you look like the unreasonable one. If you try to reason with them, they've won. Because toxic people don't want resolution, they want reaction. That keeps the cycle going. They feed off your energy, your frustration, your attempts to fix things. The only way to win is not to play. Recognizing the bait, toxic people are strategic in the way they provoke you. Their bait often comes in subtle, calculated ways, such as backhand compliments. Oh, wow, you actually did something right for once. Guilt trips, I guess I'll just struggle on my own since you're too busy for me. Blame shifting, I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't made me angry. Triangulation, playing people against each other to create tension and drama. Silent treatment, withholding communication, just to make you anxious and and force a reaction. The key is to see the bait for what it is, a tactic to pull you into their drama. Once you recognize it, you regain control. Mastering the art of disengagement. Here's a simple but powerful truth. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to respond to every insult, every provocation, or every guilt trip. You can choose silence. Here's how you disengage effectively. Stay neutral when they try to provoke you. Don't react emotionally. Keep your tone calm and neutral. They can't fight with someone who refuses to engage. Use minimal responses. A simple, I see, or that's interesting, can shut down their attempts to drag you into an argument. Delay your response. If someone is baiting you over text or email, don't respond immediately. Give yourself time to calm down and craft a neutral response. Or don't respond at all. Exit the conversation if things escalate. Physically or verbally, remove yourself. I'm not engaging in this conversation, and walking away is a power move. Let them sit with their own behavior. Toxic people want you to clean up their mess, emotionally, mentally, or even physically. Don't let them deal with the consequences of their actions. The power of emotional detachment. Toxic people lose interest when their tactics stop working. They want chaos, but if you refuse to give it to them, they have nothing to latch on to. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your peace than their games. It means you understand that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every comment deserves a response. It means knowing that your energy is yours to protect the next time a toxic person tries to bait you. Pause, take a deep breath, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Most of the time, the answer will be no. One of the hardest lessons we learn in life is this. We can love people and still choose to walk away. When we think about letting go of toxic relationships, whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, or even a romantic partner, we often feel like we're faced with two choices. Either stay and endure the toxicity or cut them off completely with cold indifference. But there's a third option, one that allows us to protect our peace while still honoring the humanity of the other person. Detaching with compassion. What it means to detach with compassion. Detaching with compassion means recognizing that while you may care for someone, their presence in your life is not healthy. It means understanding that you are not responsible for fixing them, healing them, or absorbing their pain as your own. It means letting go without hatred, without resentment. And about guilt, many of us hold on to toxic relationships longer than we should because we believe that walking away means we don't care. That's simply not true. You can have empathy for someone and still choose not to be drained by them. You can wish them well and still recognize that their energy is not something you can continue to carry. Why we struggle to let go. Letting go is never easy, especially when we've invested time, love, and effort into a relationship. There are several reasons why we find it difficult. We feel responsible for them. If they are struggling, we may believe it's our job to help them, to be there no matter what. But staying in a toxic dynamic out of obligation only leads to exhaustion and resentment. We hold on to hope that they'll change, maybe if we explain things differently, if we're more patient, if we love them harder. But here's the truth. Change has to come from within you. Can't force someone to heal if they don't want to. We fear being seen as heartless. People may judge us for stepping back. They might say we're selfish, but prioritizing your mental, emotional health is not cruelty, it's self-respect. We confuse detachment with abandonment. Walking away from a toxic situation doesn't mean you're abandoning the person. It means you're choosing to stop enabling a dynamic that harms you. How to detach with compassion. So how do you let go while still maintaining kindness and integrity? One, accept that you can't change them. One of the biggest breakthroughs in detachment is understanding that you are not responsible for another person's healing. You can encourage, you can support, but ultimately their growth is their responsibility if they continue in toxic pattern. P.S. Despite your efforts, that's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of where they are on their journey. 2, set clear boundaries without guilt. Detachment doesn't necessarily mean cutting someone off completely, though sometimes that is necessary. It may simply mean limiting contact, choosing not to engage in their drama, or refusing to take on their emotional burdens. Boundaries are not about punishing them. They're about protecting yourself through. Let go of the need for closure. Sometimes we think we need a dramatic conversation, a final explanation, or an apology before we can walk away. But closure isn't something other people give us. It's something we give ourselves. You don't need them to understand your reasons. You don't need their validation. You are allowed to close the chapter simply because it's what's best for you. 4, release resentment. Holding on to anger only keeps you emotionally tied to the person you're trying to detach from. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing their behavior. It means freeing yourself from the weight of it. When you let go with love instead of bitterness, you truly free yourself. 5, they wish them well from a distance. Detaching with compassion means you don't have to hate them, wish them harm, or seek revenge. You can simply say, I hope they find peace, but I can't be the one to provide it for them. This mindset allows you to walk away with grace rather than guilt. Detaching doesn't mean you don't care. The people we walk away from aren't always villains. Sometimes they are people we deeply love who are trapped in their own pain, repeating harmful cycles they may not even realize they're in. But love alone is not enough to sustain a relationship that continually drains and wounds us. Attaching with compassion is an act of strength, not coldness. It's a way of saying, I love myself enough to walk away, and I love you enough to hope you find your own healing. So if you find yourself in a relationship that constantly depletes you, remember this: you are not obligated to carry anyone else's burdens at the cost of your own well-being. You can release them with love, with kindness, and with the knowledge that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go when dealing with toxic people. The most important tool you have isn't logic, confrontation, or even setting boundaries. It's radical self-awareness. It's radical self-awareness means paying deep attention to your emotions, your triggers, and your patterns in relationships. It means being brutally honest with yourself about how certain people make you feel and why you react the way you do. Because here's the truth. Toxic people can only manipulate you if you don't understand yourself well enough to see it happening. Why self-awareness is your superpower. Toxic people thrive on emotional confusion. They make you doubt yourself, second-guess your reactions, and question whether you're the problem. But when you develop radical self-awareness, you become unshakable. You recognize emotional manipulation the moment it starts. You stop engaging in toxic cycles because you see them for what they are. You regain control over your reactions rather than being pulled into their chaos. Self-awareness gives you clarity, and clarity is power. How to develop radical self-awareness. 10. Pay attention to how you feel around certain people. Your emotions are data. They tell you what's working and what's not, but too often we ignore them or rationalize them away. Start asking yourself, do I feel drained or energized after spending time with this person? Do I feel anxious before seeing them? Do I shrink myself, filter my words, or walk on eggshells when they're around? Do I feel respected and valued or dismissed and controlled? Your body and emotions will tell you the truth long before your mind does. If you constantly feel uneasy around someone, trust that feeling. It's not in your head, it's a warning sign. 2, to identify your triggers and patterns. Toxic people know how to push buttons, and if you don't know what your buttons are, they will keep getting pressed. For example, do you feel an overwhelming urge to prove yourself when someone questions your intelligence? Do you feel guilty whenever someone accuses you of not being a good friend, partner, or family member? Do you shut down or explode yourself when someone dismisses your feelings? These are emotional triggers, and toxic people exploit them. But once you identify them, you can control your reaction. Instead of falling into their trap, you can step back and say, I see what's happening here. I don't have to engage in this game. 3, own your part in toxic cycles. This one is tough, but necessary. Radical self-awareness requires you to take responsibility for how you show up in toxic relationships. That doesn't mean that toxicity is your fault. It means you have the power to change how you respond to it. Ask yourself, am I staying in this dynamic out of guilt, obligation, or fear? Am I trying to fix someone who doesn't want to change? Am I allowing disrespect because I don't want to cause conflict? Am I addicted to saving people even when it costs me my peace? This kind of self-reflection isn't about blaming yourself. It's about empowering yourself. The moment you recognize your role in the cycle, you can step out of it or listen to your inner voice, not just the noise around you. One of the biggest obstacles to self-awareness is outside influence. Society, family, and even our own past conditioning can drown out our inner voice. For example, you might have been raised to believe that family is everything, so you feel guilty for distancing yourself from a toxic relative. You might have been taught to be nice and avoid conflict, so you tolerate disrespect instead of speaking up. You might have been told you're too sensitive, so you dismiss your valid feelings. But radical self-awareness means trusting yourself more than external voices. It means asking, what do I truly feel? What do I truly need? And honoring those answers, no matter who disagrees. 5, stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Toxic people love to make you doubt yourself. They'll twist your words, rewrite history, and make you feel like you have to justify your boundaries, emotions, or decisions. But here's a hard truth. Some people don't want to understand you, they want to control you. Self-awareness means recognizing when someone is engaging in good faith conversation versus when they are just trying to exhaust you into submission. If someone constantly invalidates your feelings, stop explaining yourself to them. Your truth doesn't require their approval. 6, be willing to let go of people who don't align with your growth. Growth means outgrowing people. And that's painful. Sometimes self-awareness leads to a difficult realization. Some people only fit into past versions of you. They were compatible with you when you were less confident, when you tolerated more, when you ignored your own needs. But as you grow, those relationships start to feel misaligned. It's okay to let go of relationships that don't fit who you're becoming. It's not betrayal, it's evolution. Self-awareness is a form of protection. Radical self-awareness isn't just about understanding yourself. It's about protecting yourself. When you deeply understand your emotions, your triggers, and your worth, no one can gaslight you into believing their version of reality. No one can manipulate you into feeling guilty for setting boundaries. No one can trap you in a toxic cycle because you now recognize the pattern. The more self-aware you become, the less power toxic people have over you. So the next time you find yourself caught in a toxic dynamic, pause, breathe. Tune into your emotions. Your feelings are not a burden. They are a compass. Listen to them, trust them, honor them. Because when you truly know yourself, no one else gets to define your reality. Have you ever wondered why some women walk into a room and instantly shift the energy without saying a single word, while others bend over backwards trying to impress, only to be forgotten just as quickly? Why is it that the more you give, the less he seems to care, and yet the woman who does less somehow has him wrapped around her finger? Here's the truth. Everything you've been taught about attraction, about love, about what it takes to make a man desire you deeply has been backward. We live in a world that tells women to prove their worth. Be the nice girl. Show him how much you care. Always be available. Always be the one to fix, explain, overgive, and love harder. But let me ask you this. Has that worked for you? Or has it only led you to heartbreak, confusion, and chasing someone who never truly chose you? Here's the part no one talks about. The moment you chase, you lose. The moment you beg for love in the name of effort, you give away your power. The moment you try to convince him that you're enough, you silently tell him that you aren't. And men feel that not through words, but through energy, through your presence, through your silence. But what if you didn't have to beg? What if you didn't have to explain yourself, overthink every move, or shrink yourself just to keep his attention? What if you could become the kind of woman who naturally makes men want to prioritize you, fight for you, and crave your presence without saying much at all? I'm about to give you 7 habits that don't just shift how he sees you, they will shift how you see yourself. These habits are rooted in emotional power, psychological mastery, and feminine magnetism. And once you master them, you won't need to chase another man again because they will feel you. They will sense that something about you is different, rare, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep you in their life. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about tricks. This is about reclaiming your energy, your value, and your place as the prize. And once you start living this way, you'll become unforgettable, irresistible, craved, not because of effort, but because of embodied confidence. So, are you ready to break the old patterns? Are you ready to stop chasing and start choosing? Because once we begin, there's no going back. By the end of this video, you will understand why he hasn't been doing anything for you and how to flip that switch forever. Stay with me, because the final habit is the one that will make him feel addicted to your presence without even knowing why. Let's dive in. 1, become the emotional experience he craves. Most women think men fall in love with effort, with logic, with good behavior. But let me tell you a truth that will flip your entire reality. Men don't fall in love with what makes sense. They fall in love with what moves them, shakes them, haunts them, what makes them feel something they can't explain and can't find anywhere else. You see, love, devotion, obsession, they don't start in the mind. They start in the body, in the nervous system, in that invisible realm of energy where emotion trumps reason and presence outweighs perfection. So if you're sitting there thinking, if I just show him how good I am, how loyal I can be, how supportive I am, you're missing the point completely. Because the women who make men do anything for them, who make men commit, adore, and chase relentlessly, those women aren't the ones who give the most. They're the ones who make him feel the most. And not just any feeling, deep, consuming, intoxicating emotion, the kind of emotion that lingers long after you've left the room. Think about the people you've never been able to forget. Were they the kindest, the most consistent, or were they the ones who made you feel something raw, real, electric? That's the difference. You're not just trying to be liked, you're becoming an experience, a fantasy, a trigger, a storm. Because when a man links your presence to a powerful emotional state, he doesn't just want you, he needs you. The emotional experience isn't about drama or chaos. It's about contrast. It's about awakening something in him that no one else touches. When he feels excited in your presence, but peaceful in your silence. When he feels seen by you, but never fully figures you out. When he feels both challenged and comforted, that's when you become embedded in his emotional memory. But here's the key. You cannot fake this. You cannot pretend to be magnetic while inside you're riddled with self-doubt, neediness, or fear. Men don't respond to words, they respond to frequency, to how you carry yourself, to the tone of your voice, to how grounded you are in your own presence. That's why the woman who says almost nothing can still leave the deepest impression, because her energy speaks louder than words ever could. To become the emotional experience he craves, you must first shift. From seeking to creating. You stop waiting for him to choose you, and instead you create a space where he gets to experience a version of himself that he loves most when he's with you. This is emotional mirroring, and it's subtle but unstoppable. When he feels powerful, sexy, admired, and important around you, not because you praise him endlessly, but because your energy reflects his potential. He bonds with you without knowing why. But again, this isn't about overgiving. It's not about playing the muse while forgetting yourself. It's about amplifying the parts of you that naturally harmonize with him while still staying fully in your power. The feminine isn't passive, it's magnetic. It draws in, it evokes, it transforms. So stop trying to win him with logic. Stop overthinking the text. Stop obsessing over how to be liked. Instead, ask yourself, how does he feel when he's around me? What parts of himself does my energy bring out? Does he feel more alive, more seen, more masculine, more certain? Or does he feel comforted but bored, appreciated but not captivated? You see, safety is beautiful, but it's not the hook. Emotional addiction, the kind that makes him do anything for you, comes from the unpredictable, the contrast, the little moments where he catches a glimpse of something in you that lights up a part of him he didn't know he was missing. That's why trying to be perfect backfires. That's why being too available, too agreeable, too easy to access makes you invisible. The brain doesn't chase what it already understands. It chases what it can't quite grasp, what it feels but can't define. That's where obsession is born. So becoming the emotional experience he craves isn't about being the loudest or the most beautiful or the one who gives the most. It's about learning to feel deeply and express that depth through energy, through silence, through subtle emotional contrast that keeps him on the edge of curiosity. It's about creating presence so potent that he starts associating your face with the highest versions of himself. And yes, this requires emotional intelligence. Yes, it requires knowing how to hold space without always feeling it. Yes, it requires unlearning the urge to explain, to fix, to force connection. You must learn to let him feel you, not just hear you. To make him crave your presence, not because you give so much, but because when he's with you, he becomes more of who he wants to be. And the best part, when you master this habit, you no longer wonder, what should I say? Or does he like me? Or is he losing interest? Because his actions will answer for you. He'll show up, he'll initiate, he'll move mountains just to get that emotional high again. And no, this isn't about manipulating his feelings. It's about awakening your own. It's about learning how to embody your magnetism instead of seeking validation. Because when you stop needing him to feel you and start creating energy that commands him to, everything changes. He will do things for you he's never done for anyone else. Not because you convinced him, not because you pushed or pulled, but because he now links you with something rare, something sacred, emotion that makes him feel alive. And once that link is made, it's unbreakable. That's the power of becoming the emotional experience he craves. That's the first step to making any man do anything for you. Not because he has to, but because he wants to with every fiber of his being. 2, use silence as a weapon, not words. There's a reason silence is feared by most, and yet it's also the most powerful tool of the most captivating women. Because here's the secret no one tells you. When you master silence, you master attention, desire, and emotional control. Most women are conditioned to talk, to explain, to fix things with words. We fill the air when we're nervous. We justify ourselves when we feel misunderstood. We overcompensate with constant messaging, endless paragraphs, emotional dumping, hoping that the more we share, the more they'll understand, care, and respond. But that's not how attraction works. That's not how power works. Words don't create mystery, they resolve it. And the moment a man feels like he fully understands you, he stops being intrigued by you. Silence, on the other hand, does what? Words never can. It lingers, it echoes. It wraps around his thoughts when you're not there. Silence is tension. Silence is elegance. Silence is control. A woman who can sit in silence without shrinking, without panicking, without needing to fill the space, is a woman who commands the room without saying a word. That kind of energy is rare, and men feel it instantly. Think about it. Who makes the strongest impression in a crowd? It's never the one talking the loudest, trying to be heard. It's the one who doesn't need to say much because her presence is already felt. When you speak less, every word you say carries more weight. When you don't explain yourself constantly, people lean in closer, listening harder, wondering what you're thinking. Silence creates psychological tension. It creates the space for his imagination to run wild. And that space is exactly where desire is born. The male mind is wired to chase, to decode, to figure things out. So when you leave something unsaid, when you pull back your words instead of pouring them all out, when you allow the mystery to breathe between you, he begins to crave closure. And craving is the seed of obsession. But here's where it gets even deeper. Silence doesn't just affect him. It transforms you. It makes you more intentional, more present, more powerful. You begin to speak only when it matters. Not because you're trying to be heard, but because your words are worth being heard. That subtle shift changes the entire dynamic. Instead of being the one who reacts, you become the one who sets the tone. You hold the frame, you lead the energy of the interaction without ever needing to dominate it. And don't get me wrong, this isn't about being cold or withholding or playing games. This is about being strategic, emotionally intelligent, and self-respecting. It's about understanding that words are not always the answer, and that sometimes silence is the loudest declaration of self-worth. Think of how many times you've sent that long emotional message explaining everything, hoping he would finally understand, finally change, finally see you. Did it ever work? Or did it just make you feel more exposed, more vulnerable, more powerless? Now imagine this. Instead of explaining, you simply stop talking. You stop overgiving. You stop trying to win him over with effort. You let your absence speak. You let him feel the weight of your silence. That's when he starts checking your stories. That's when he starts asking where you've gone. That's when he starts wondering if he's lost you. Because silence triggers one of the most primal fears in a man's psyche, the fear of losing, something he can't quite possess. When you master silence, you trigger that fear in a way that pulls him in instead of pushing him away. It creates the emotional contrast that keeps his attention sharp. One moment he's close, the next you're quiet. One moment he's feeling certain, the next you've gone still. That even flow, that dance of presence and pause. That's what makes him addicted to figuring you out. And you're calm, you're grounded, you're in control. You don't react, you don't chase, you don't over-explain. You radiate self-trust. And that trust becomes magnetic. Remember this. Emotional restraint is seductive. It tells him that your world doesn't revolve around him. It signals that you are selective, intentional, high value, that you don't throw your energy just anywhere. Silence is the ultimate filter. It reveals who is genuinely invested. A man who cares will step into the silence. He will reach out. He will fill the space with his effort. And the ones who don't, let them go. They were only feeding off the constant access, not your essence. The truth is, when you over-communicate, you teach him to stop listening. When you overshare, you teach him to stop wondering. When you explain every detail, you teach him to stop pursuing. But when you become a little less available, a little more still, a little more mysterious, he starts to chase clarity. And in chasing that clarity, he deepens his connection to you, his emotions become activated, his desire becomes real. You are no longer just a voice, you are a presence that lingers, a presence that cannot be forgotten. So start practicing this today. Don't respond instantly. Don't justify your silence. Don't explain yourself unless you truly want to. Let your energy speak for you. Let your pauses build power. Let your stillness be a mirror for his intentions. Watch how everything shifts when you stop talking just to fill the space and start choosing silence like a woman who knows her worth. Because a woman who masters silence masters desire. She becomes a question he can't stop asking, a mystery he can't stop craving. If you've ever felt like you're doing too much and getting too little, try doing less and letting the silence do the talking. Trust me, it speaks volumes. If this message resonated with you, if you're starting to feel that power awaken in you, take a moment right now to support this space. Like this video and comment number 1 if you're feeling this energy, and make sure you subscribe because what's coming next will take you even deeper into your feminine magnetism. And once you tap in, there's no going back. 3, be the prize, not the pursuer. The moment you start chasing a man, you've already told him without a single word that he is the prize and you are the pursuer. And that one shift in energy is all it takes to unbalance the entire dynamic of desire. You see, desire does not bloom in the hands of the one who is constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly showing up uninvited. It blooms in the space between curiosity and uncertainty, in the tension between presence and distance. And when you become the one who pursues, who proves, who tries too hard, you strip that tension away. You place him on the pedestal. You unconsciously announce that he is the one worth fighting for, that his validation is what matters, that his attention is the prize you are willing to bend for. But you were never meant to bend. You were born to be chosen, not to beg. And that is the energy that changes everything. When you know you are the prize, deeply, unshakably, not just on the surface, but in your soul, you carry yourself differently. You stop giving to be liked. You stop trying to earn a spot in his life. You stop waiting by the phone, obsessing over what he's thinking, wondering if you're enough, because suddenly your question isn't, will he pick me? It's, is he even worthy of me? That is the internal shift that flips the frame of power. And men feel it instantly. They feel it in your silence, in your stillness, in the way you no longer force conversations, in the way you look into their eyes, not to seek approval, but to observe, to evaluate. Because a woman who knows her value does not perform for attention. She selects it. She attracts naturally, effortlessly, not through loud effort, but through quiet confidence. That's why the most magnetic women in the world rarely do the chasing, because they understand that when you're the prize, you don't need to prove anything. You are the reward. And here's what's fascinating. Men are biologically and psychologically wired to chase, to pursue, to conquer. But they only chase what feels just slightly out of reach, what feels emotionally valuable, what they sense could be lost if they don't act. And when you position yourself as the prize, you become that value, you become that emotional high. Not by pretending, not by manipulating, but by pulling your energy inward, by knowing you are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to be everything to the right one. That belief, it's magnetic. It creates space. It creates curiosity. It creates that moment of panic in him that whispers, I could lose her. And that is the moment he begins to prioritize you. Not because you asked, not because you begged, but because your energy demanded it. So how do you become the prize? It's not about looks. It's not about playing hard to get. It's not even about being high value in some checklist kind of way. It's about knowing at your core that your time, your energy, your presence, and your love are not free. They are sacred, they are selective, they are earned. And when a man earns you, truly earns you, he values you. He protects what he values. He invests in what he fears losing. And this is not about ego. This is about feminine power. The kind of power that doesn't chase, it chooses. The kind of power that doesn't explain, it embodies. You don't need to say, I'm the prize. You need to believe it. You need to move like it. You need to breathe like it. The woman who knows she is the prize doesn't overreact. She doesn't rush into proving how loyal she is. She doesn't spiral when a man pulls away. She leans back, she watches, she observes, she holds the frame because she knows that anything she has to chase is not aligned. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And when you live in alignment, you naturally attract people who want to meet you there. You stop settling for breadcrumbs because you know you are the whole feast. And when a man meets a woman who gives off that energy, not performatively, but authentically, he feels her power before she even speaks. That's the woman he can't get out of his mind. That's the woman he thinks about at night. That's the woman he changes for. But the moment you forget that you are the prize, the moment you lean forward too much, trying to prove your worth to someone who hasn't even earned your time, you begin to drain yourself. You begin to dilute your energy. You begin to confuse your effort with value. But effort does not equal value. Alignment does. Presence does. Energy does. And nothing is more powerful than a woman who stands in her energy without chasing anyone to notice it. That kind of woman doesn't need to say, look at me. She simply exists in such a way that people can't help but look. That is the essence of the prize. It's not about being cold. It's not about withholding love. It's about holding your boundaries, protecting your peace, knowing that love freely given is still not free. It must be received by someone capable of honoring it. And when you meet someone who does, you give fully, you open fully, but never out of fear, never to win someone over. You don't chase love, you invite it in. That is how you build devotion, not through desperation, but through depth. So if you've been the one doing all the reaching out, always initiating, always being the one to keep the connection alive, pause, pull back, reclaim your energy, stop trying to be the one he chooses, and start choosing yourself. Let him feel the space. Let him step forward. Let him show you who he is when he's not being carried by your effort. You might be surprised at what happens when you stop showing up so much and allow him to come to you, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you are hard to forget. And that changes everything, because once a man realizes you are the prize, not the convenience, not the option, not the placeholder, but the prize, he either steps up to claim it or he walks away. And either way you win. Because a woman who knows her worth doesn't fear being alone. She knows that solitude with self-respect is far more beautiful than connection based on self-abandonment. She doesn't need attention to feel desired. She is desired even in her silence. She doesn't chase answers. She becomes the question. And when you embody that kind of energy, you attract not just men, but kings. Men who recognize the difference between charm and character. Men who don't run from intensity, but crave it. Men who are not intimidated by your power, but drawn to it like gravity. That's the reward of becoming the prize. That's the life you step into when you stop chasing and start choosing. You don't have to fight for it. Your place in someone's life when you are rooted in the belief that your presence is the gift. And once you fully embody that truth, you'll never settle again, because you'll finally understand that what you were looking for in someone else was never something they could give you. It was something you had to claim for yourself first. And once you claim it, once you become the prize in your own eyes, the entire world begins to see you differently, including him. 4, control the energy you radiate. Energy doesn't lie. It whispers before you speak, enters the room before your body does, and stays behind long after your words have faded. Every woman radiates something, but few are conscious of what that energy truly says about them. So let me ask you, what are you radiating when you walk into a room? Is it confidence or hesitation? Power or insecurity? Grace or anxiety? Because here's the truth. Most women never realize how you feel about yourself on the inside is how the world responds to you on the outside. Men don't fall for the woman who tries to be confident. They fall for the woman who is the one who walks with quiet certainty, who doesn't need to perform, who doesn't seek permission to take up space. She moves through the world like she belongs there because she has already chosen herself. That's what sets her apart, not her makeup, her dress, or her words, but the energy she radiates from within. It's the way she makes eye contact with purpose, the way she doesn't flinch in silence, the way her stillness speaks louder than noise. That's the kind of woman who stays in a man's mind. That's the kind of energy that reshapes how people perceive you, not because you're faking it, but because you've become it. Controlling the energy you radiate starts with a decision. A decision to stop waiting for the world to affirm you and to start affirming yourself. It's waking up every day and choosing to align with the version of you that knows she's enough, even when no one's watching, because the way you carry yourself when nobody's clapping is the way the universe will respond when the spotlight finally hits. A man senses that. He senses when you walk into a date, not hoping he'll like you, but simply observing whether he's worthy of your energy. He senses when you speak with intentionality, not to impress, but because your voice matters. He feels the difference between a woman who is trying to win him and a woman who knows she doesn't need to win anything because she's already whole. This energy doesn't beg, it doesn't perform, it doesn't panic when someone pulls back. It stays grounded, it stays magnetic. Because when you control your energy, you stop reacting. You start responding. You stop giving your power away through overthinking, overgiving, overexplaining. You stop letting your emotions leak out through insecurity. Instead, you become the container. You hold your center. You lead the emotional tone of every interaction without trying to overpower it. And this doesn't mean being rigid or masculine. It means embodying a deeper form of feminine power, the kind that doesn't need external validation to feel internally strong. When you learn to shift from seeking energy to sovereign energy, everything changes. People will notice something about you they can't quite name, but they'll feel it. They'll feel calmer around you, more intrigued by you, more pulled into your presence, because you're not radiating the need to be seen, you're radiating the truth that you already are. So how do you cultivate this kind of energy in real life? You start by getting honest with yourself. Where are you outsourcing your confidence? Where are you dimming your light in hopes of being more accepted? Where are you shrinking to fit a role that doesn't even excite you? Catch those moments. Interrupt them, replace them, stand taller, speak slower, breathe deeper, move with intention. Stop rushing to fill the silence. Start seeing every interaction as a mirror, because how you feel about yourself will be reflected back through every word, every look, every response you receive. If you want to be respected, radiate respect for yourself first. If you want to be adored, start adoring the parts of you you've been hiding. Men don't respect women who try to prove themselves. They respect women who have nothing to prove. Because when you walk in with the belief that your presence alone is enough, it becomes true. Confidence isn't just attractive, it's contagious. It sets the frame. It creates safety. It becomes the emotional anchor in an unpredictable world. And let me be clear, this doesn't mean you'll never have doubts or insecurities. It means you no longer lead with them. You no longer let them run the show. You acknowledge them, then return to your center again and again. That's the difference between performative confidence and embodied power. And here's what happens. When you radiate this kind of energy consistently, people begin to treat you differently. They pause when you speak. They don't interrupt. They notice when you're absent. They follow your lead, not because you demanded respect, but because you became someone it's impossible to ignore. And men, they start leaning in. They start texting first. They start putting in effort, not because you asked them to, but because your energy called them forward. That is the kind of influence that cannot be faked. It is felt, it is experienced, it is remembered. So the next time you catch yourself doubting your worth, rushing to explain yourself, trying to make someone understand your value, pause, pull your energy back, remember who you are, return to your truth. Because the world responds to the energy you bring into every room. You are not invisible. You are not forgettable. You are not replaceable. But you must believe that first. And once you do, you'll never have to explain your worth again. It will be felt, it will be sensed, it will be chased. If you're feeling this energy, if this is awakening something powerful and raw inside of you, don't just listen, lean in. Like this video and drop a comment with number 1 if this resonates with your soul. And hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started and the next habit will take your energy from magnetic to absolutely irresistible. 5, trigger his mind through contrast. Attraction isn't built in safety, it's built in contrast. It's not born in the places where everything is certain, predictable, and available, but in the mysterious gaps between presence and absence, warmth and distance, expression and silence. If you want to trigger a man's desire, not just temporarily, but in a way that burns into his emotional memory, you must understand how powerful contrast is. Not just in what you say, but in how you move, how you connect, how you disappear, and how you return. The human mind is wired to chase what it cannot fully predict. The moment something becomes too accessible, too available, too certain, the desire for it begins to fade. This isn't because people are cruel or ungrateful. It's because psychological desire is fueled by curiosity. And curiosity dies in full clarity. That's why you can give everything to a man, your time, your body, your heart, and still feel him drifting away. Because you removed the chase. You gave him the full picture too fast. You never allowed him the space to miss you, to wonder about you, to crave what he didn't fully understand. And contrast doesn't mean playing games. It means understanding emotional rhythm. Just like music, your energy needs variation, moments of stillness, tension release, and silence. Too much consistency, and the emotion becomes flat. But if you give just enough, then pull back, then return with intention, you create a wave of emotional highs and lows that keeps him hooked. Think about the relationships that have burned themselves into your soul. Were they smooth and constant? Or were they laced with unforgettable moments of intensity, then quiet distance, then unexpected reconnection that hit you harder than logic ever could? That's not coincidence, that's contrast. The most unforgettable people in our lives are not the ones who made us comfortable. They're the ones who made us feel. And feeling requires tension. It requires the unknown. It requires a space where the mind begins to obsess, not because it should, but because it can't stop. When you create contrast, you make him feel alive, you keep his attention sharp, you introduce just enough uncertainty that his emotional brain stays engaged, alert, captivated. 1 minute you're fully there, present, soft, connected. The next you're focused on yourself, unavailable, mysterious again. That shift doesn't confuse him, it consumes him. He starts wondering what you're thinking. He replays the last thing you said. He reanalyzes your energy. He questions if he did something wrong or if you're just that powerful. And that inner questioning, that's the beginning of his obsession. Because obsession is just emotional curiosity multiplied by unpredictability. And when you master that emotional rhythm, when you learn to lean in and pull back with intention, you don't have to force a connection. It forms naturally, authentically, powerfully. But here's the part most women get wrong. They confuse contrast with inconsistency. They think creating tension means being hot one day and cold the next without reason. But inconsistency comes from insecurity, from fear, from trying to manipulate with withdrawal instead of embodying your worth. Contrast is not manipulation, it's art, it's movement. It's knowing when to give, when to receive, when to be fully in the moment, and when to retreat into your mystery. It's knowing that every moment doesn't have to be filled with conversation, that not every question needs an answer, that sometimes the most powerful connection you can create is through your absence. Because space isn't empty, it's magnetic. And if you never create space, he will never feel your impact. If you're always the one reaching out, always saying yes, always available when he wants you, you become invisible not because you lack value, but because you've removed contrast. And without contrast, the mind relaxes. It stops craving, it stops reaching, it starts assuming you'll always be there. And once it assumes that, the magic dies. So how do you trigger his mind through contrast without feeling like you're playing a role? You start by pulling your energy inward. You stop trying to fill every silence with validation. You let moments breathe. You practice the pause. You feel when to lean in, and you trust yourself enough to lean out. You observe his energy, and when he starts to pull away, instead of chasing, you mirror. You slow down. You create distance not to punish, but to reawaken the contrast. You stop answering texts immediately. You stop showing up every time he calls. You allow yourself to be missed, to be longed for, to be imagined again. Because imagination is the birthplace of desire, and desire needs fuel. When he knows what you'll do next, he stops watching. But when you become unpredictable in your emotional rhythm, not dramatic, not volatile, but subtly unattainable, you shift the balance of power. You stop being the one seeking reassurance, and you become the one who causes reflection. He starts investing more, thinking more, craving more. He starts associating you with the feeling of emotional depth, the thrill of not fully knowing what you'll say next, how you'll respond when you'll reach out again. And that makes you unforgettable. Contrast isn't just external, it's internal too. It's how you move between your softness and your strength. It's how one moment you're laughing freely and the next you're looking at him with a stillness that makes him pause. It's how you reveal just enough of your heart to be real, but not so much that there's nothing left to explore. You give in layers. You speak in waves. You express with emotion, but you don't hand him the entire map of your soul all at once. That's what keeps him intrigued. That's what makes him feel like he has something valuable to earn, not something easily handed over. And here's the beautiful part. When you do this authentically, when you live with contrast instead of trying to create it artificially, it doesn't feel like a strategy. It feels like power, because it is. You're no longer seeking to be loved. You're creating an experience that makes love inevitable. You're no longer proving your worth. You're becoming a mirror for his deepest desires because he sees in you the one thing he can't fully possess. And men fall the hardest for what they cannot completely hold. It activates their protector, their provider, their inner competitor. They don't want what's easy. They want what's rare. And when you embody contrast, when your emotional expression is a dance of presence and pause, you become the rarest thing of all. You become irreplaceable. So stop trying to be the woman who always shows up, always explains, always says yes. Start becoming the woman who gives just enough, then disappears into her world again, who lets her energy rise and fall like music, who makes him wonder. Not because she's playing games, but because she is the game. And once he starts playing that game, he won't want to stop. Because it's no longer about impressing you, it's about feeling you. It's about earning each layer of your emotional presence. It's about proving to himself that he's worthy of the next reveal. That's what contrast does. It creates mystery. It awakens chase. It turns you from someone he likes into someone he needs to figure out. And when a man is emotionally invested in trying to understand you, he begins falling deeper, not for what you give him, but for what he feels when he's around you. That's the invisible hook. That's the emotional tether that pulls him back when you're gone. So remember, contrast is not rejection. It's not avoidance. It's seduction. It's rhythm. It's the sacred tension that makes connection magnetic. If you give too much, you flatten it. If you never give, you kill it. But if you master the dance, if you offer just enough to spark his heart, then retreat into your own world with confidence and softness, he'll follow. He'll remember. He'll crave you, not for what you do, not for what you say, but for what he feels in your absence. And once you've created that feeling, you won't need to ask him to show up. He'll show up willingly because you've become the emotional contrast his mind can't stop chasing. And once a man is in that state, there's no going back. 6, mirror his deepest desires authentically. Connection isn't about words, it's about resonance. Deep, lasting, almost unexplainable resonance. It's when someone doesn't just understand your words, but your essence. And when it comes to men, especially the kind of man you want to captivate, the kind who doesn't just look but sees, who doesn't just touch but feels, the connection must go beyond surface compatibility. It must feel like recognition, like something ancient waking up inside him. And you want to know how to create that kind of soul-stirring connection that makes him think about you even when he doesn't want to? You mirror his deepest desires, not with manipulation, but with presence. Not by becoming him, but by reflecting the most raw, hidden, powerful parts of himself back to him. Because every man walks through the world with armor, expectations, roles, masks, but deep down there's a part of him that wants to be seen. Not just as who he shows the world, but who he is beneath all that. And when your energy aligns with that invisible layer, when you reflect it back with softness, authenticity, emotional intelligence, he feels something rare. He feels home. He doesn't know why he's drawn to you. He doesn't have the words. He just knows that being near you feels like being closer to himself. That's how devotion begins. Not with constant effort, not with control, but with emotional mirroring that touches the part of him even he has forgotten. But here's what makes it powerful. You can't mirror someone if you're disconnected from yourself. You can't reflect his desires if you don't know your own. That's why this isn't about pretending. It's about revealing. It's about tuning into his energy in a way that awakens, not imitates. For example, when he's passionate about something, you don't just smile and nod. You feel that fire with him. You let your eyes reflect excitement. Your body language becomes animated. You meet him where he is, not to please him, but because passion is part of your language too. When he's quiet and thoughtful, you don't rush to fill the space. You slow down. You lean into the silence. You let the stillness speak between you. You show him energetically that you can hold space for every layer of him, not just the entertaining, charming, easy parts. That's where emotional trust is born. And when he feels safe, seen, and understood without needing to explain himself, he begins to link that feeling with you. And once that happens, you're no longer a woman he's dating. You become a sensation, an imprint, a place his nervous system wants to return to. But the key here is balance. Mirroring is not about disappearing into him. It's not about losing yourself in his world. It's not about molding to his moods or becoming what you think he wants. That's not mirroring, that's abandonment. Authentic mirroring is amplifying the parts of you that naturally connect with him. If he's playful and light, and that's part of you too, lean in. Let him see that side of you that glows with laughter. If he's deep and philosophical and you carry that same soulfulness, let that shine. But don't fake what isn't real. Don't suppress who you are just to fit into a mold, because the most magnetic women are the ones who are fully themselves, but can meet a man in his emotional landscape without losing their own. That's what makes him stay. That's what makes him fall. It's not that you're identical. It's that you're attuned, that you can flow with him without forcing, that you can feel with him without faking, that you can connect with him without controlling. And when you do this, you become the first person he truly lets in, because most people try to impress from the outside. But you reach him from the inside. You bypass the surface and speak to the parts of him that no one else even notices. And suddenly, he doesn't just want you. He needs you. Not in a desperate way, but in a soul level way. He starts telling you things he's never said out loud. He starts imagining a future with you without being asked. He starts showing up not just out of attraction, but out of emotional alignment. Because here's the secret most people don't understand. Men don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with reflection, with the rare woman who helps them see and feel the most powerful version of themselves. And the beauty of this is you don't have to be his type. You don't have to tick every box. What matters is the way you make him feel seen, understood, amplified. So how do you develop this gift of emotional mirroring? You slow down, you observe, you get curious. You listen with your whole body, not just your ears. You learn to read his energy instead of always responding to his words. You feel what's underneath and you trust you let your body speak through subtle shifts. You allow your energy to dance with his. You let his fire bring out your fire. You let his softness awaken your softness. And you do it without losing yourself. That's the part that takes maturity, because the moment you lose yourself in someone else, the mirror cracks. It stops reflecting and starts distorting. That's why knowing who you are before you ever mirror someone else is the foundation. You must be rooted in your identity, your values, your truth. You must be able to say, this is me, even when the connection is strong, because connection built on self-abandonment will always collapse. But connection built on authenticity, that's unbreakable. That's the kind of connection that men fight for, that men stay loyal to, that men remember forever. Because it's not just about how you made them feel about you, it's about how you made them feel about themselves. And when you create that feeling, when a man feels more like himself around you than anywhere else in the world, that's when he devotes. That's when he cherishes. That's when he chooses you. Not because you demanded it, but because he experienced something so rare, so soul-shifting, that the thought of losing it terrifies him. That's the power of mirroring done right. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not even obvious. It's subtle. It's emotional. It's unforgettable. So if you've ever wondered how to create a connection that doesn't fade, that doesn't flicker when things get hard, that doesn't die when the thrill of novelty wears off, this is how you mirror his essence back to him. Not to manipulate, not to control, but to create emotional harmony so deep it feels like fate. And that's a feeling no man forgets. If this spoke to your heart, if you felt this in your body, then you're ready to step into this level of magnetic femininity. Like this video and drop number 1 in the comments if this resonated with you on a soul level. And don't forget to subscribe, because coming next, we'll show you how to fully stop overgiving and start receiving the love you deserve. 7, stop overgiving and start receiving. The reason most women feel unseen, unappreciated, or constantly exhausted in their relationships isn't because they're not enough. It's because they've been conditioned to give too much. Somewhere along the line, you were taught that the way to love is through sacrifice, that the more you give, the more you'll be valued, that if you're always available, always nurturing, always pouring, he'll see your worth. But what if I told you that's the very thing pushing him away? That overgiving isn't a sign of love. It's a signal of self-abandonment. That true power, true magnetism, true irresistible energy doesn't come from what you give, but from what you allow yourself to receive. You see, when you're constantly overextending, over-offering, over-investing, you're actually blocking the very thing you crave. Polarity. Polarity is the natural attraction between two energies, the giver and the receiver, the active and the receptive, the masculine and the feminine. And when you occupy both roles, when you do everything, fix everything, carry the emotional labor, chase connection, make the plans, send the follow-ups, you leave no room for him to show up for you. You've taken on so much that he doesn't have to, and then you wonder why he stops trying, why he takes you for granted, why the relationship starts to feel one-sided, heavy, uninspired. But the answer isn't to give more. It's to pause, to soften, to shift from doing to being. Because receiving isn't passive, it's powerful. It's a choice. It's an energetic state of openness, of trust, of knowing that you are worthy of being poured into, not just because of what you offer, but because of who you are. And I know for many women, receiving feels uncomfortable, it feels unfamiliar, it feels like weakness, like laziness, like vulnerability. But that's not the truth. That's just old conditioning. You are told that the way to be lovable is to earn it, to prove it, to give until there's nothing left. But a man does not fall in love with a woman because she sacrifices herself for him. He falls in love with the woman who inspires him to rise, to give, to protect, to provide. And he cannot do that if you are already doing everything. Men are most activated when they feel useful, when they feel needed in the healthiest way, when they feel their presence matters. And if you're always 10 steps ahead, always in control, always anticipating and managing and fixing, you rob him of the opportunity to feel that. So stop trying to be everything. Stop trying to carry it all. Let him feel what it's like to lead, to initiate, to come forward and meet you where you are instead of constantly being pulled into your energy without effort. And if he doesn't step up, let that be the answer. Because your worth is not measured by how much you can hold. It's measured by how deeply you trust yourself to let go of what isn't aligned. And here's the paradox. When you stop overgiving, you don't receive less. You actually receive more because you finally created space. Space for him to rise. Space for you to be seen. Space for the connection to deepen instead of being carried by your emotional labor. And in that space, something shifts. He begins to lean in. He begins to notice. He begins to feel the energetic void that your overgiving once covered. And that void pulls him closer because now it's his turn. And this doesn't mean you stop showing love. It doesn't mean you become cold, distant, or detached. It means you become selective, intentional. You give from overflow, not emptiness. You share because it's natural, not because you're afraid he'll leave. You love because it expands you, not because you think it will finally earn his. This is the art of embodied receiving. And it begins with boundaries, with honoring your yes and protecting your no, with trusting that your softness is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it, that you don't need to be the one who always texts first, that you don't need to explain yourself into exhaustion, that you don't need to keep proving you're worthy of love that should be freely given to you. The truth is, and you teach people how to treat you based on what you tolerate. And every time you give beyond your limit, every time you stay when your spirit says go, every time you fix what isn't yours to fix, you reinforce the belief that your value is tied to your effort. But it isn't. Your value is in your being. Your value is in your presence, in your heart, in your essence. And when you fully know that, you stop reaching. You stop pouring into the wrong hands. You stop trying to be chosen, and you choose. You choose to receive, to open, to surrender control, not because you're weak, but because you are finally strong enough to trust. That's when the dynamic changes. That's when the giving becomes mutual. That's when your energy becomes rare, because now you're no longer giving out of fear. You're receiving from abundance. And men feel that shift instantly. The moment you stop trying to earn, they start trying to deserve. The moment you stop proving, they start pursuing. The moment you stop filling every gap, they start noticing the weight you carried, and they feel inspired to carry it with you. That's the beauty of energetic balance. That's the root of romantic polarity. But you must be willing to sit in the discomfort of not doing, of not fixing, of letting things unfold without your control. You must be willing to feel the fear of, will he step up and let him answer? You must be willing to lose someone rather than lose yourself again. And I know that's scary, especially if you've spent your whole life being the strong one, the giver, the caretaker, the one who never asks for help. But the truth is, your softness is not a liability, it's your superpower. And when you stop overgiving, you allow it to emerge. You let yourself be held. You let yourself be chosen, not for what you do, but for who you are. And that is the deepest kind of devotion. So take your energy back. Reclaim your space. Stop pouring into what doesn't pour into you. Let him feel your absence long enough to recognize your value. Let him feel the contrast between your presence and your distance. Let him realize that access to your heart is a privilege, not a guarantee. And when he shows up, receive him fully, softly, powerfully, not because you need him, but because you know you deserve someone who shows up without being begged to. This is not about becoming less of a lover. It's about becoming more of a woman who gives when it's earned, who receives when it's safe, who trusts herself enough to know that anything she has to chase is not worthy of her love. And in that energy, you are unstoppable. You are magnetic. You are home. And any man lucky enough to experience that will never want to leave. So now you know the power was never outside of you. It was never in the chasing, the pleasing, the overthinking, or the proving. It was never in the long texts, the constant availability, the fear of losing someone who was never meant to stay. It has always been in your energy, your presence, your ability to move through the world as a woman who no longer seeks permission to be chosen, but who chooses herself so completely, so fiercely that the world around her begins to reflect that truth back to her. When you become the emotional experience he craves, when your silence speaks louder than your words, when you stop chasing and begin radiating your worth like a pulse, when you hold contrast like a mystery he aches to solve, when you mirror his essence without losing your own, and when you finally stop overgiving and open to receive, you don't just attract men, you shift their world. You leave fingerprints on their soul. You become the one they can't stop thinking about, the one they remember in crowded rooms, the one they compare everyone else to but never quite replace, not because you tried harder, but because you became more of yourself, the version of you who is no longer playing small, no longer auditioning for love, no longer shrinking in the hopes that someone will make room for you. You've outgrown that. Now you are the room. You are the pulse. You are the experience. And when a man meets a woman like that, he doesn't just fall, he dives. Because deep down, every man is waiting to be met by a woman who holds this kind of energy. A woman who doesn't just know her worth, she embodies it. And the moment she walks into his life, nothing feels the same again. Because she isn't just someone to date, she becomes a standard, a turning point, a memory that never fades. And now that woman is...
Let me tell you something most people don't realize until it's too late. Looking young has almost nothing to do with good genes. And it has everything to do with your daily habits. You've seen those people, right? The ones who seem to defy time, who walk into a room and instantly light it up. Their skin is glowing, their energy is magnetic, and no one can guess their age. It's not magic. It's not luck. That's what they do. Consistently. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 7 habits that people who look young forever live by. Not once in a while, every single day. These habits are backed by science, experience, and real-world transformation. And I guarantee some of them are going to surprise you. Stress is the silent killer of youth. You want to know what really ages you? It's not just sugar or lack of sleep or skipping sunscreen. It's stress. Chronic, unmanaged, day in and day out stress that piles up and settles into your face, your posture, your energy. You can see it in someone's eyes when they're drowning in it. You can feel it in their voice, in the way they move, in the way they stop showing up for their life. Stress doesn't knock politely and ask if it can make you look older than you are. It kicks the door down and starts rearranging your body chemistry, dulling your skin, making your hair fall out and stealing your vibrance. And the worst part, most people don't even notice it's happening because stress has become their normal. The people who seem to look young forever, they know something different. They know that stress is inevitable, but staying stressed is optional. These people don't avoid life's challenges. They just respond to them differently. Instead of reacting, they pause. Instead of spiraling, they breathe. They don't wait for vacation to relax. They've learned how to create moments of peace in the middle of chaos. That might be 10 deep breaths in a locked bathroom while their kids scream on the other side of the door. It might be a walk without their phone. It might be journaling every morning before the sun comes up. The method doesn't matter. The commitment does. Managing stress isn't about controlling life. It's about controlling how you show up in it. And here's something no one tells you. Stress ages you from the inside out. It messes with your hormones. It inflames your cells. It tightens your jaw, your shoulders, your gut. It makes you look older because it is aging you at the cellular level. You can't fake glow when your nervous system is fried. You can't radiate peace when you're carrying resentment and exhaustion. That's why people who look younger than their age are often not the ones with the most money or access to fancy skincare. They're the ones who know how to self-regulate. They've taught their bodies how to come back to calm. That calm is their anti-aging secret weapon. Stress also triggers emotional habits that do damage long after the stressor is gone. Emotional eating, snapping at people, withdrawal, overthinking. All of these things break down your vitality. When someone is constantly living in fight or flight mode, their body never gets a chance to recover. And it shows. It shows in the puffiness under their eyes, the tightness in their face, the tension in their body language. Looking young isn't about being wrinkle-free. It's about carrying yourself with energy, presence, and openness. And none of those things can coexist with chronic stress. So what do the ageless people do differently? They protect their peace like it's their most valuable asset, because it is. They say no without guilt. They remove themselves from toxic conversations and energy-draining people. They take breaks from social media. They check in with themselves, not just with their schedules. They have boundaries, and they actually enforce them. They don't feel bad for needing time alone, for canceling plans, or for going to bed early. They understand that how they feel matters. They understand that stress will knock years off their life if they let it. And so they don't. They also stop tying their worth to performance. One of the biggest stressors of modern life is this constant pressure to do more, be more, prove more. But people who look young forever have cracked a different code. They've realized that rest is productive, that joy is essential, that laughter is healing, that doing less is not a weakness, it's a strategy. They don't grind themselves into burnout. They move at their own pace. And as a result, their bodies don't carry the weight of the world. Their faces don't wear the evidence of their suffering, and their hearts stay open to new experiences. They choose presence over perfection. Because here's the truth. Stress often comes from trying to control everything. People age faster when they live in a constant state of worry and perfectionism. But when you start letting go of what you can't control, when you start trusting yourself to handle life as it comes, when you learn to exhale instead of clench, it shows. It shows in how your face softens. It shows in how your energy feels. It shows in how people say, you don't look your age at all. That's not luck. That's not genetics. That's the reward of a woman or a man who decided to stop letting stress run the show. You want to know one of the simplest, most underrated secrets to looking young for as long as possible? Move your body. And I don't mean you have to train for a marathon, lift heavy in a gym, or follow a complicated fitness plan. I mean move daily, purposefully, with intention. People who look young forever understand that movement is not about vanity. It's about vitality. It's about showing up in your body like it matters, because it does. When you neglect it, it shows. When you care for it, that shows too. The people who walk into a room with a glow, the ones who have that spark in their eyes and a bounce in their step, they're not just blessed. They've earned it. They move every single day, even when they don't feel like it, especially when they don't feel like it, because movement isn't just a physical act. It's mental. It's emotional. It's a decision that says, I am not going to let this day own me. I am going to own this day. And when you make that choice, your body thanks you in ways you don't even realize. Your skin clears up. Your posture lifts. Your energy returns. Your confidence rises. Movement tells your body, I want to keep living fully. And your body responds with vitality. You stay flexible, you stay strong, and you stay young, not because of a number, but because of momentum. Stiffness, sluggishness, fatigue, those are signs of stagnation. And nothing ages you faster than being stagnant. When you stop moving, everything slows down. Your metabolism, your blood flow, your mood, your drive. That's why the people who look like they've found the fountain of youth aren't sitting around waiting for motivation. They've made movement a ritual. It's as routine as brushing their teeth. And that commitment compounds over time. They don't overthink it. They just get up and go. A 30-minute walk, 10 minutes of stretching, dancing in the kitchen, cleaning with music on, riding a bike, doing yoga in their pajamas. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to happen. Because the point isn't intensity. The point is consistency. And consistency beats intensity every time. You don't get youthfulness from occasional effort. You get it from daily discipline. And people who look young forever know that their body needs motion like it needs air and water. It's non-negotiable. There's also a mindset shift that comes with daily movement. When you move, you're not just changing your body, you're shifting your mood. You're shaking off stress. You're releasing anxiety. You're boosting serotonin. You're literally turning on the chemicals that help you feel and look better. You stand taller, you smile more, you carry yourself with energy that says, I'm alive and I'm not slowing down. That's magnetic. That's youthful. And it has nothing to do with how many years you've lived. It has everything to do with how you're living them. Movement also reminds you of your own power. When you push your body even a little, you remind yourself that you're not fragile. You're not too old. You're not stuck. That reminder builds mental strength. It builds resilience. It builds the kind of inner grit that keeps you energized when everyone else is burning out. And let's be honest, confidence looks good on everyone. People who move with purpose carry a different kind of presence. You see it. You feel it. They walk into a room and their energy speaks before they do. And here's something else people don't talk about. When you move every day, your body starts to detox naturally. Sweating, stretching, breathing deeply. Those things help your system flush out what it doesn't need. That means clearer skin, brighter eyes, a lighter mood. These are not random side effects. They are the natural results of treating your body like the incredible machine it is. And when your body feels good, it shows in your smile, in your glow, in how you carry stress differently. The people who seem to defy aging, they're not immune to time. They've just decided they're not going to sit back and let it happen without a fight. They move with intention, not because they're obsessed with staying young, but because they're committed to staying well. They understand that motion is medicine, that movement is not optional, it's essential. And they don't wait for the perfect workout or the perfect day. They do it now, today, because every day you move, you're sending a message to your future self. I care about you. I'm investing in your energy. I'm keeping your spark alive. And that spark is what people notice before the wrinkles, before the age, before anything else. Let me tell you something most people completely underestimate. Sleep is not a luxury, it's a strategy. The people who look young forever aren't staying up all night scrolling, worrying, or burning themselves out for the sake of productivity. They guard their sleep like their life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. When you see someone glowing, energized, clear-minded, there's a good chance they're not just drinking green juice or using fancy skincare. They're sleeping, and not just any sleep. They're getting intentional, deep, high-quality rest. Because that's where your body resets, that's where your mind declutters, and that's where real rejuvenation happens. The truth is, your body does its best repair work when you're asleep. Your skin regenerates, your muscles recover, your hormones balance, and your brain cleans house. And if you don't give it the time and space to do that work, it shows. In your face, in your mood, in your energy. You wake up puffy, cranky, foggy. You overreact to small things. You start depending on caffeine just to make it through the day. That's not youthful energy. That's survival mode. And people who want to stay vibrant and sharp, they refuse to live in survival mode. They choose restoration. They make sleep non-negotiable. They don't treat it like an afterthought or squeeze it in at the end of a chaotic day. They plan for it. They create rituals around it. They turn off the noise, the lights, the distractions, because they know their future depends on how well they rest today. They understand that every hour of deep sleep is an investment in how you feel, in how you look, in how you function. Is the most underrated beauty treatment, the most effective mental clarity tool, and the cheapest therapy you'll ever find. And yet most people sacrifice it for things that drain them. The people who preserve their youth aren't out here trying to prove anything to anyone by staying up later or working harder or pushing themselves past exhaustion. They've learned that the real flex is peace. The real power is in protecting their energy, and that begins with protecting their sleep. They're not up all night chasing validation. They're down for the count by 10 p.m. with their phone on silent and their mind already in recovery mode, because that's what self-respect looks like. That's what self-care actually means, not bubble baths and candles, but boundaries and discipline around your rest. And it's not just about how many hours you get. It's about the quality. They optimize for deep, uninterrupted sleep. That means a cool room, no screens before bed, a wind down routine that tells their body, hey, we're safe, we're good, let's rest now. Because here's the truth. Your body listens to what you do more than what you say. If you flood it with stimulation right up until the moment you shut your eyes, don't be surprised when you wake up feeling like you didn't sleep at all. But if you train your body to associate nighttime with peace, it rewards you with restoration. These people aren't chasing more, they're chasing better, better focus, better energy, better aging. And sleep gives them all of that. It resets the nervous system. It regulates appetite. It strengthens the immune system. And all of that leads to one thing, longevity. Looking young isn't about luck. It's about consistent choices that reduce stress, repair damage, and restore vitality. And none of those things happen if you're running on fumes. Chronic sleep deprivation ages you faster than any external factor. It literally breaks down collagen, spikes inflammation, and clouds your thinking. That's not just science, it's common sense. Yet we ignore it like it's optional. You want to look younger? Start with how you sleep. You want to feel better, think sharper, look more alive? Look at your bedtime. What time are you going to bed? What are you doing before you close your eyes? Are you giving your body the signals it needs to wind down? Or are you keeping yourself in fight or flight mode until you pass out from exhaustion? Because there's a difference between passing out and resting deeply. People who preserve their youth understand that difference, and they prioritize accordingly. They also understand that rest isn't laziness. It's strategy. It's strength. It's saying, I know what I need in order to be my best, and then giving yourself that. That's not indulgence. That's alignment. And when you live in alignment, it shows. You radiate calm. You have less stress written all over your face. Your energy becomes magnetic. You age in reverse, not because you're fighting time, but because you're finally working with it. You're allowing your body to catch up, to recover, to breathe. So when you see someone who looks like they've cracked the code to youth, chances are they're not out here chasing magic pills or shortcuts. They're just sleeping like their life depends on it. Because they've learned that real power comes from the quiet moments, the stillness, the discipline of unplugging and letting go. Sleep isn't weakness. It's the most radical form of self-love you can practice. And people who understand that, they carry a different kind of energy. The kind that doesn't burn out, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that glows from the inside out. Let's get one thing straight. Stress is aging you faster than any bad habit you can name. It's not just a feeling. It's a full body experience, a chemical reaction, and it leaves a mark on your skin, on your organs, on your mental clarity. And people who look young forever, they're not stress-free, but they sure as hell don't let stress run their lives. They've learned how to manage it, contain it, and redirect it because they know that carrying constant tension is like carrying a ticking time bomb in your body. It wears you down, burns you out, and makes you look tired even when you're not. These people don't just hope they'll feel better. They create systems to feel better. They have tools, rituals, outlets. Maybe it's breath work, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's a walk in silence or 20 minutes with their phone off. Whatever it is, they take it seriously. They don't push their emotions aside and pretend they're fine. They name it, they feel it, and then they release it because they know that suppressed stress doesn't disappear. It stores itself in your body. It shows up as tight shoulders, as exhaustion, as irritability, and over time, it breaks you down. You see someone who looks 10 years younger than they are? Don't just ask what cream they're using. Ask how they handle pressure. Ask what they do when life gets heavy. Because youthful energy is rooted in resilience. And resilience doesn't mean you don't break. It means you bend and bounce back. That takes practice. That takes intention. People who age well have built emotional strength through daily habits. They don't live in reaction mode. They've stopped letting other people's chaos dictate their peace. That kind of self-mastery is what keeps their nervous system in check their cortisol levels low, and their minds clear. They're also not addicted to drama. They're not doom scrolling, gossiping, or feeding into negativity. They're not absorbing every piece of bad news like it's their responsibility to carry the weight of the world. They've built boundaries around what gets their energy, not because they're selfish, but because they know energy is currency. And stress is one of the most expensive things you can waste it on. But they've learned to say no without guilt, to walk away from people who bring chaos, to pause instead of react. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And wisdom, by the way, is sexy. It's magnetic. It keeps you grounded and glowing. You know what else they do? They move their body every single day, not to lose weight, not to punish themselves, but to move stress through and out of their system. Because when you're physically stagnant, emotions stagnate too. They understand that movement isn't just about fitness. It's therapy. It's emotional hygiene. A walk, a stretch, a workout, a dance party in the living room.
Let me ask you something straight up. How do you really know if a man is loyal? Not when he says he is. Not when he posts you on social media. Not when he tells you what he thinks you want to hear. I'm talking about the real unshakable kind of loyalty, the kind that shows up when no one's watching, the kind that doesn't need a spotlight or applause. Most women miss it completely. Not because they're not paying attention, but because loyalty in men doesn't always look the way we were taught to expect. We've been conditioned to believe loyalty screams, but in truth, it whispers. And those whispers, they're in his micro behaviors, tiny, almost invisible actions that speak volumes if you know what to look for. Here's the trap. We fall for the loud gestures, the fireworks, the declarations of forever, but those are easy to fake. Real loyalty shows up in a man's unconscious habits. It lives in the way he reacts without thinking, the choices he makes when no one's around to judge, the rhythm he builds with you even when life gets chaotic. And here's the twist. It's not about how charming he is. It's about how consistent he is when you're not looking. But here's the problem. 99% of women overlook these micro behaviors. They're too subtle, too soft, too everyday. And that's exactly why they're powerful. So today, we're flipping the script. We're diving deep into the 7 micro behaviors loyal men display without even noticing, the ones that reveal everything you need to know about a man's character. Emotional investment and integrity. This isn't about playing it cool or watching for textbook red flags. This is stoicism in love, emotional stillness, rooted devotion, and a quiet depth that doesn't need to be flashy to be trustworthy along the way. I'll challenge what you think loyalty looks like. I'll invite you to question your own expectations, and I'll show you how to see through the noise so you can stop wasting time with men who talk pretty but walk messy. Because once you recognize these signs, you'll never unsee them. You'll cry, know when you're with someone real, someone whose loyalty is written into the way they exist with you, not the way they perform for you. This isn't about romance the way movies sell it. It's about connection that's built like stone, slow, quiet, strong. It's about being loved by a man whose actions are louder than his words. And by the end of this, you won't just understand loyalty. You'll be able to feel it, trust it, and finally stop settling for less. So take a breath, drop into the moment, because what you're about to learn could change the way you view men dating, and even yourself. We're not just decoding behavior. We're developing emotional mastery. We're not chasing love. We're learning to recognize the men who live it. Welcome to the world of Love Stoic. Stay with me to the end. Number 3 will absolutely shift how you look at something as simple as a man's phone. Are you ready? 1, he's consistently predictable in the best way. There's something often overlooked in the world of romantic attraction, and that's the quiet power of consistency. In a culture obsessed with spontaneity and passion, where surprises and grand gestures are hyped as proof of affection, we tend to forget the men who show up at the same time, who text good morning without fail, who arrive at your door at 6:30 because that's what they do. Not because they had to prove anything, but because their presence in your life is grounded. A loyal man doesn't need to be reminded to show up. He simply does. You might know the moment he'll call, or the rhythm of his messages, not because he's robotic, but because he's rooted. He's the calm in a world of chaos, the steady pattern in a life full of question marks. Predictability, in this context, is not boredom. It's safety. It's a love that doesn't flinch, a heart that doesn't wander. He creates a rhythm that you begin to depend on, not out of desperation, but out of recognition that this is what true emotional security looks like. Stoicism teaches us that peace is not found in constant excitement, but in stability. And that's exactly what a loyal man brings. He's not playing emotional hide and seek. He's not testing your patience or confusing you into chasing. He is there. And the more present he is, the more you begin to understand what real masculine energy feels like. Solid, unwavering, quietly protective, in a stoic love. The highs aren't exaggerated and the lows aren't dramatic. There is a maturity to his consistency, a decision he's made, not just about you, but about how he wants to show up in love. Because loyalty isn't just a feeling. It's a series of decisions made over and over again, often when it's inconvenient. And that's what makes predictability so powerful. It means he's already chosen you in his actions, even before the words are said. How many times have you second-guessed a man's intentions because his behavior was all over the place? How often have you found yourself decoding text delays, trying to assign meaning to silence, guessing what mood he's in today? A loyal man doesn't invite that kind of confusion. He removes it, not with big speeches, but with a grounded routine that says, I am here, I am choosing this, and I will keep choosing it. There's a kind of romance and reliability that only emotionally mature women appreciate, because it isn't loud, but it is true. And when you think about the kind of man you want beside you, through life's inevitable storms, don't you want the one whose presence is a promise in itself? The man who doesn't chase excitement elsewhere, because he understands that the deepest connection comes from depth, not novelty. A love stoic man embraces the steady beat of devotion. His predictability is not a cage. It's a container, a place where you can finally rest, a relationship that doesn't drain you with uncertainty but fills you with peace. Because the truth is, loyalty isn't sexy to everyone. It doesn't sell movie tickets, but it builds legacies. It raises families. It shows up when your hair is a mess, when your world is on fire, when nothing about you feels worthy, and still he stays. Why? Because his actions are no longer driven by short-term pleasure. They're guided by long-term alignment. That's the spirit of Stoicism applied to love. No games, no show, just presence, just principle, just a man who sees love as a commitment, not a convenience. And while it might not take your breath away every moment, it will ground you. It will heal every part of you that once thought chaos was love. Predictability becomes your sanctuary, not your sentence. So the next time you find yourself doubting whether predictability is enough, ask yourself this. Is unpredictability what you're really after, or are you addicted to the anxiety that inconsistency brings? Has culture taught you to romanticize confusion? Because once you've tasted a man who chooses you with rhythm and intention every time, you'll wonder why you ever tolerated anything less. Love stoic means loving with character, not chaos. It means letting a man's consistency calm your nervous system instead of letting unpredictability spike it. This kind of man isn't driven by ego. He's driven by values. He sees love not as a feeling that changes with the wind, but as a principle worth building his life around. He is predictable in the best way, because in a world that constantly pulls our attention in 1,000 directions, he is the place you can come home to. And the more you recognize this, the more you start to crave not the spark, but the stability. That's not boring. That's rare. That's freedom. That's what it means to be loved by someone whose micro behaviors scream loyalty even when his mouth says nothing at all. Two, his phone behavior is transparent and relaxed. In today's digital world, a phone isn't just a device. It's a window into someone's private life, a reflection of how open or guarded they truly are. We live in an age where communication is instant, where secrets are just a swipe away, and where privacy can be weaponized. That's why one of the most subtle yet powerful behaviors a loyal man displays, without ever intending to, is his relationship with his phone. Have you ever been with someone who flips their phone face down the second they sit next to you, who suddenly turns off notifications when you ask to use it? For directions, who holds onto their phone like it's a diary of secrets? These aren't just habits. They're signals. And when you're with a loyal man, you'll notice something completely different. His phone rests on the table face up. It buzzes, and he doesn't panic. He leaves it unlocked near you, not because he's trying to prove a point, but because he's not trying to hide one. His behavior isn't about convincing you. He simply has nothing to conceal. And in that silence, in that casual openness, there's a depth of trust you can feel in your gut. That's love stoic energy. It's quiet, but it's powerful. It tells you that he's not living a double life, that he doesn't need to curate his digital world behind your back. Stoicism in modern love isn't about deleting the need for privacy. It's about aligning privacy with integrity. You see, loyal men don't see transparency as a threat. They see it as a natural byproduct of honesty. They're not performing access, they're offering peace. So when he casually hands you his phone and says, yeah, go ahead, search it, that's not weakness, that's security, that's emotional safety you can rely on. And you might think, isn't that just basic decency, maybe? But why is it so rare? Why is it that so many women still find themselves decoding the meaning of sudden phone flips, of last seen disappearances, of anxiety, inducing pauses between replies? A loyal man gives you clarity, not confusion. And the A by beauty of this behavior is that it's not about control, it's about inclusion. You're not being kept outside his world. You're being welcomed into it. Ask yourself, how often have you been made to feel like a guest in someone's digital life? How many times has that triggered your anxiety, your insecurities, your instinct to question yourself? Now, imagine the difference when a man's energy, even the way he holds his phone, says, you don't have to wonder. You're already in. There's nothing to prove because there's nothing to protect. He's not erasing messages or closing apps quickly. He's not acting differently when you're around versus when you're not. That's the real giveaway. Consistency across spaces, digital and physical loyalty lives in how he handles the boat unseen, not just what he does in the spotlight. So why does this matter so much? Because a man's phone behavior reveals where his mind and his integrity live. And Stoicism reminds us that character is what you do when no one's watching. Love Stoic men. Internalize that. They don't need to be policed. They police themselves. They operate from principle. They don't flinch when asked questions like, who just texted you? Or can I see that picture again? Because there's nothing lurking beneath the surface, nothing growing in the dark, just transparency, just trust, just a subtle, almost boring kind of peace that lets your nervous system rest. That's rare, and that's why it's so valuable. Now, if you're nodding right now thinking, wow, I've never experienced that kind of ease, ask yourself, are you chasing the wrong signs? Have you been so used to guarding your own intuition that you've forgotten what it feels like to trust someone fully? What changes everything? When you no longer have to dig to snoop to second guesses because his whole energy, even down to how he treats a buzzing phone, tells you he's already chosen you. You see, the most loyal men aren't loud about it. They're not running around telling you, look how faithful I am. They're just quietly congruent. What they say and what they do match what they promise, and what they practice align, and their digital habits reflect that inner peace. You'll notice the difference, not because it's flashy, but because it feels like a sigh of relief. That's the power of this micro behavior. That's what happens when Stoicism meets modern connection. It becomes a fortress of calm in a noisy world. And ladies, don't settle for a man who makes you feel like a detective in your own relationship. Wait for the one who makes you feel like a partner, like someone who deserves access, not because you demanded it, but because he values it. When his phone behavior is open, relaxed, uncalculated, that's not a loophole. That's the evidence, that's the hidden language of loyalty. So if this resonates, if you've ever longed for a man whose phone behavior makes you feel safe instead of suspicious, then you know you're not asking for too much. You're just asking for the right man. And that man already lives with love, stoic values. He values integrity over image, character over convenience. He's not flawless, but he's clear. And in a world that constantly teaches women to question their instincts, that kind of clarity is a gift. If you felt this part, like and comment number 1 below to let me know this resonates. And if you want more content that decodes how emotionally solid men think, feel, and show love, subscribe, because we're only just getting started. 3. He casually mentions you in conversations. There's a unique kind of loyalty that doesn't shout your name, but somehow always includes you. One of the most overlooked signs of emotional devotion is when a man casually weaves you into his everyday language, not as a performance, not for validation, but because you're part of how he sees and experiences the world. He talks about something funny he heard and adds, she actually showed me that clip. He's in a conversation with coworkers and naturally says, yeah, we went there last weekend. Your name isn't dropped like a name tag. It's embedded like muscle memory. It means you're not a file. He opens and closes. You've become his baseline. That kind of seamless inclusion is a micro behavior, but its meaning is monumental. A loyal man doesn't compartmentalize you. He doesn't tuck you away for one context and erase you in another. You're not part of a separate emotional category. His relationship life versus his real life. No, when a man is loyal, he speaks in a way that reveals how deeply you're stitched into his story. He doesn't think, should I mention her here? He just does. Because to him, you're already part of the narrative he's living. And this isn't about putting you on a pedestal or flaunting you like a trophy. It's subtler than that. It's when you hear about a story he told his friend and he included your opinion. It's when his mom knows what book you're reading or when his colleague knows you make the best iced coffee. These aren't rehearsed mentions. They're unconscious signals that you matter, even when you're not present. And in a world where so many women have been kept a secret, ghosted in daylight, or treated like a moment instead of a meaning, that kind of inclusion is more than refreshing. It's radical. Ask yourself, how often have you been edited out of a man's life? How often have you sensed he was drawing invisible lines between you and the rest of his world? A loyal man erases those lines, not with grand declarations, but with tiny conversational threads that say, she's part of this too. You're not his private hobby. You're part of his public rhythm. And stoicism plays a key role here, because a stoic man doesn't build love on spectacle. He builds it on alignment, and alignment shows up in everyday language, effortless, genuine, unfiltered. It's not that he needs to name drop you to prove his love, it's that his mental map already includes you. And his speech simply reflects that internal map. Love stoic men don't separate love from identity, they integrate it. They don't say, let me act one way in front of you and another way in front of the world. They speak with integrity. And integrity doesn't hide, it doesn't shrink. It includes, and the beautiful part, you don't have to beg to be seen. You already are. The conversation proves it. And this behavior goes deeper than surface impressions. It's about psychological intimacy. When a man constantly refers to you in passing, it means he's processing life with you in mind. It means your presence shapes his decisions, his perspectives, his humor. You become part of his reference point. And that's where the emotional anchor lives. It's not just that he loves you, it's that he's woven you into his internal architecture. And isn't that the kind of loyalty that matters most? Not just the hand-holding and photo posting, but the mental presence. The fact that even when he's in spaces without you, your voice, your thoughts, your impact travels with him. That's emotional loyalty. That's what separates a man who's with you from a man who's truly devoted to you. And here's the nuance. He's not bragging about you. He's not turning conversations into monologues about his relationship. He's just talking and you show up effortlessly. That's the test. Are you part of his everyday story? Or are you a chapter he only reads in private? A loyal man sees no boundary between his love life and his real life. They are one and the same, and stoicism once again guides this. A stoic man does not perform connection. He lives it. He doesn't manipulate the narrative. He speaks from truth. So his words, even in casual chats, carry weight. They reflect alignment. They reveal presence. He is not worried about appearances. He's focused on coherence. And in that coherence, your place beside him becomes unmistakable. The world doesn't need to know every detail, but the way he includes you says everything. Loyalty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just there, quietly existing between syllables, between we and I, between my weekend and our weekend. You begin to notice that you're no longer chasing proof, because the proof is in his speech. It's in the way your name finds its way into places you've never been, because your significance is carried with him. That's how you know. You're not just loved, you're embedded. There's no script for this, no manual. It's not something he rehearses. It just spills out like instinct, like truth, like home. And when that happens, it calms something deep inside you. It assures you without theatrics. It anchors you without noise. Because love, when rooted in stoicism, doesn't need to shout to be known. It just is, it breathes quietly through words that aren't trying to impress, but simply express. So next time you hear a man mention you like, it's the most natural thing in the world. No, that's not an accident. That's integration. That's alignment. That's loyalty in its most graceful form. 4, he notices subtle changes in your mood. There's a level of attentiveness that can't be taught, only revealed. When a man is loyal, truly loyal, his awareness of you shifts from something deliberate to something instinctive. He doesn't need a dramatic meltdown to sense something's off. He notices the quiet pauses between your texts, the slight drop in your tone, the missing emoji in a message where it usually belongs. He tracks your emotional weather like someone who cares deeply. Not because he's trying to fix you, but because he's already connected to how you feel. It's not a skill he learned. It's a sensitivity he developed over time, quietly, as he let his care for you build roots. And it's never performative. It doesn't come with speeches or exaggerated concern. It shows up in the smallest moments, when he asks everything okay before you even realize something's not. When he holds space without forcing you to explain, when he sits with your silence instead of running from it, that's not coincidence. That's connection. It's one of the most overlooked signs of true loyalty, because it's quiet. It doesn't scream. It senses. And stoicism lives here not in indifference, but in presence, in tuning in rather than reacting. A love stoic man doesn't jump to conclusions. He doesn't make your mood about him. He simply notices, and that alone shifts everything. How many times have you felt invisible in your own emotions? How many times you had to scream just to feel seen with a loyal man? You won't need to raise your voice. Your change in energy is enough. He may not always know what's wrong, but he'll always know that something is, and he'll show up not to solve, but to sit beside. He doesn't weaponize your sensitivity. He doesn't shame your sadness. He allows it, honors it, holds it, because in his world, love isn't just about joy. It's about presence through all seasons. Think about the kind of peace that creates to be read without speaking, to be known without announcing. It's not magic. It's emotional attunement. It's loyalty turned into empathy. And it's rare. So rare that when you feel it, it might confuse you. You might ask yourself, why is he noticing this? Why is he checking on me when I didn't even say anything? That's the very nature of it. He's not waiting for an invitation. He's already attuned. And again, this isn't about mind redating. It's about caring enough to track the subtle patterns of your emotional life. It's about knowing what your good days look like so he can recognize when something shifts. And that takes presence, not just physical, but emotional. Loyalty isn't just about staying. It's about paying attention, especially when things are quiet, especially when you've withdrawn, not out of anger, but out of overwhelm. A disloyal man will miss that completely. A loyal man will lean in gently. He might send a short text or ask a thoughtful question or simply say, I'm here if you need, and you'll feel it. Not because he said the perfect thing, but because he noticed, without being told. That's where real emotional intimacy begins. That's what builds long-term trust. And Stoicism adds the discipline to this sensitivity. A Stoic man doesn't overreact or spiral when you're off. He stays centered. He doesn't make your mood about his ego. He lets your pain exist without absorbing it. That's how he supports without smothering. That's how he brings calm into your storm. He doesn't rescue, he remains. And that presence, steady, observant, grounded, is a form of love so powerful, most women don't even know to ask for it. They've been taught to measure love by words, by gifts, by declarations, but real love, the kind built by a loyal and emotionally mature man, is measured in these micro moments when you say, I'm fine, and he gently says, are you sure, when he notices that you haven't played your favorite song all week, when he asks if you want to go outside, because he knows nature clears your mind. These aren't dramatic gestures. They're subtle devotions. The world calls them soft, but they're built on strength. The kind of strength that listens deeply, observes patiently, and cares consistently. This kind of man sees your soul, not just your smile. He recognizes that being emotionally available isn't about being dramatic. It's about being aware. He doesn't need to be told what to do. His loyalty leads him. His attentiveness affirms you. And when a man does this not once, but consistently, you begin to trust him in a way you've never trusted anyone before. You begin to relax your guard. You begin to share more freely. Not because he pried, but because he proved you safe. Love Stoic men make you feel safe by how they notice you. Not just when you're at your best, but when you're quietly unraveling. They're not threatened by your complexity. They're fascinated by your depth. They don't shrink from your storms. They anchor you through them. And isn't that the kind of love? We all crave the kind that sees you when you're dim. Not just when you're dazzling, the kind that doesn't require you to be okay to be loved. That's what this behavior represents. It's not about grand emotional intelligence. It's about choosing to care again and again in the smallest ways. When your energy dips, he notices. When your joy fades, he wonders why. When your words shrink, he leans in, not because he's obsessed, but because he's loyal, because your well-being matters to him, not out of obligation, but out of genuine regard. You can't fake this. You can't script it. And most importantly, you can't force it. It has to come from a place of real connection. A man who cares this deeply isn't doing it to impress you. He's doing it because he's invested. And if you've ever experienced the opposite being with someone who only saw you when you were useful, who ignored your sadness unless it exploded, then this kind of presence will feel like healing, like grace, like exhale. So don't underestimate this micro behavior. It might not look like much from the outside, but inside it builds something unshakable. A relationship grounded in attentiveness, in tenderness, in quiet loyalty. If this resonates with you, if you've ever longed to be noticed without needing to perform or break down, then you already understand how powerful this is. Like and comment number 1 if this part of the video spoke to you, and make sure you subscribe for more insights on what real Stoic love looks and feels like, because we're only scratching the surface. 5, he mirrors your emotions subconsciously. There's something quietly revealing about the way a man reflects your emotions without being asked. Not because he's mimicking, not because he's manipulating, but because his nervous system has subconsciously aligned with yours. When a loyal man truly connects with you, he doesn't just hear your words, he absorbs your state. He smiles when you smile. His shoulders drop when you exhale, his energy softens when yours does, and when you're tense, even if it has nothing to do with him, he senses it not in a way that invades, but in a way that adapts his tone, lowers his pace, slows. He matches not for control, but for connection. This is not something taught. It's something that happens when a man is deeply attuned to you, not just intellectually, but emotionally, somatically, spiritually. It's empathy without performance. It's love without language. Most people miss it, dismissing it as coincidence. But those who understand the deeper rhythms of human intimacy know exactly what it is. A nervous system response to deep emotional bonding. When a man is loyal, truly loyal, your happiness affects him on a physiological level. And this is where Stoicism plays a surprising role. Because true Stoicism isn't about emotional detachment, it's about emotional responsibility. A Stoic man doesn't absorb your chaos. He regulates it with presence. He doesn't mirror in order to escalate. He mirrors in order to meet, to ground, to understand. And that's what makes this micro behavior so powerful. It doesn't look like love from the outside, but it feels like safety on the inside. Have you ever had a moment where you were holding it together on the surface, but inside something was unraveling? And then he looked at you and just asked, "Are you okay?" Or didn't say anything at all, but pulled you close without needing explanation. That's this behavior in action. It's not grand. It's not grand, not loud, but it's so deep. And once you've experienced it, you can't unfeel it. You begin to recognize the subtle shifts. You start to crave the peace that comes from not having to explain every nuance of your mood. Because when a man truly mirrors you subconsciously, you're no longer alone in your emotional experience. You're seen even in silence. And that's more than comforting. It's healing. Ask yourself, how many times have you felt misunderstood in past relationships? How many times did your partner get defensive when you were simply having a hard day? A loyal man doesn't take your sadness personally. He doesn't need you to be cheerful all the time to feel secure. He allows your full emotional spectrum to exist, and his system responds in kind, not to manage you, but to walk beside you. That's what mirroring is at its core, a nervous system standing beside another, a regulated presence coexisting with a fluctuating one. Not fixing, not fleeing, just existing in tune. This doesn't mean he'll always react perfectly, but it means he'll be present in a way that feels unmistakably stabilizing. And here's what's wild. Most men don't even realize they're doing it. That's what makes this behavior so genuine. It's not a strategy. It's not a game. It's just a deep, natural alignment with someone they care about. That's what love does when it's real and undisturbed by ego. That's what love Stoic men embody, not reactive emotion, but responsive empathy. This kind of mirroring can show up in small ways, like the way he reaches for water when you do, the way he shifts posture when you feel nervous, the way he slows down his walk when your energy is low. It can also show up in big ways, how he holds your gaze when your words cannot, how he stays silent when you need space but hasn't left the room. These things matter more than we've been taught to believe because they bypass logic. They speak to the body. And when your body starts to trust someone, your heart opens more easily. You become softer. Not because he asked you to be, but because he made it safe to be. Mirroring is one of the earliest signs of attachment. Babies do it. They reflect their caregivers. And in healthy adult relationships, this instinct returns. But this time, it's not just need, it's choice. A man who chooses to emotionally mirror you, who aligns his state with yours, is choosing connection over convenience. He is choosing to regulate rather than retreat. And that choice made over and over builds a kind of intimacy you can't fabricate. It's slow, it's subtle, but it's profound. And again, Stoicism reinforces it not as a call to shut down, but as a commitment to emotional discipline. A Stoic man mirrors your emotions, not to match your chaos, but to bring calm to your storm. He doesn't heighten tension, he lowers it. He doesn't react for reaction's sake, he responds because he understands. He's not Stoic because he's numb. He's Stoic because he's grounded. And his groundedness gives him the strength to stay present, even when your emotional waves are high. This is what love looks like when it's quiet, rooted, intentional. When you're with a man like this, you start to realize that emotional safety isn't about someone solving all your problems. It's about someone witnessing them without retreating. And that witnessing, that subtle energetic reflection is more powerful than any pep talk because you feel it in your body and your bones. And maybe for the first time, you feel like you're not carrying everything alone. So if you ever find yourself with a man who mirrors your moods, who smiles without needing a joke, who quiets when you do, who grows tender when you're tired, pause, notice it, appreciate it, because you're not just with someone who listens, you're with someone who tunes in. And that kind of connection isn't built Overnight, it's forged through loyalty, through trust, through presence that doesn't flinch. Love stoic men don't flinch. They stay, they reflect, they align, they protect, not just physically, but emotionally. They protect your internal world by honoring it, responding to it, and yes, mirroring it, without fanfare, without expectation, just because they care. And because their nervous system already knows when you hurt, they feel it. When you rise, they glow, not to copy, but to connect. 6, he subtly puts you first in public and private spaces. In a world obsessed with optics, there's something extraordinary about a man whose loyalty shows up in the moments no one else sees. He doesn't need an audience to treat you with care. He's not performing chivalry. He's living it quietly, instinctively. When a man consistently puts you first, not just in public, but also in private, it's not about putting on a show. It's about how naturally you've become a priority in his nervous system, his habits, and his subconscious choices. Watch how he moves when you're walking down the street. Does he shift to the side closest to traffic without saying a word? Does he open the door and step aside, not as a gesture, but as a rhythm? These aren't acts of obligation. They are micro behaviors that reveal internal values. A loyal man orients himself around you physically, not because he's trying to impress, because your comfort and protection have already been factored into his decisions, Beck. That's stoicism in motion, no drama, no flash, just quiet consistency. And in private, it's even more telling. Does he notice when you're tired and offer to take something off your plate without you asking? Does he make space for your preferences not out of sacrifice, but out of natural alignment? The man who subtly puts you first does so not because he's keeping score, but because your ease matters to him. It becomes automatic. He includes you in decisions. He seeks your opinion, not to validate himself, but because he genuinely values how you see the world. He wants your comfort, not because he's codependent, but because your presence is now part of his peace. A love stoic man does this without needing affirmation. He doesn't need you to call it out. He doesn't post it. He lives it. It's not about grand gestures. It's about grounded ones, the kind that stack up slowly, silently, and undeniably. Watch how he adjusts his plans to include you. Always not to his detriment, but with balance. Watch how he tracks your needs in real time. When you're cold, he offers his jacket without hesitation. When you're overwhelmed, he softens his energy. These aren't random acts. They're rooted in a loyalty that runs deeper than words. Ask yourself, have you ever been with someone who made you feel like an afterthought? Someone who only considered you when it was convenient or performative? The contrast is undeniable. When a man chooses to prioritize you from a place of steady love instead of temporary obligation, it's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. And it's in the consistency of these subtle actions that real love begins to take form, because prioritization isn't always about who he cancels plans for. Sometimes it's about who he thinks about when no one's looking, who he naturally makes room for in his schedule, in his home, in his life. Stoic love doesn't demand constant reminders. It builds safety through repetition, through reflex. And you'll notice this,
especially when no one else is watching.
That's when loyalty shows its face. When he chooses to drive the longer route because he knows you prefer it. When he brings you your favorite snack on his way home, just because when he lowers his voice when you're overstimulated. When he notices you're off before you say a word and adjusts, not out of fear, but out of respect. This is how a man's loyalty writes itself into his actions. You're not being managed, you're being prioritized. And there's a difference. Management is strategy. Prioritization is heart. He doesn't just make you feel special in moments that count, he makes you feel considered in moments that don't. And that's where the real magic happens, when the love you feel is not a performance, but a presence. When the relationship feels like a place you don't have to compete for space because it's already yours. This is what Stoicism teaches us, not to suppress emotions, but to let principle drive behavior. A Stoic man who loves you doesn't need to shout about it. His loyalty is written in the way he positions himself beside you, in the way he instinctively tunes into your well-being, in the way he considers your needs, not as an inconvenience, but as a natural part of his decisions. And you'll feel it most when no one else is looking, because that's when the performance drops. That's when truth speaks. When a man's loyalty isn't just visible in the spotlight, but alive in the shadows. Then you feel it in your bones. You are loved by someone who chooses you, even when no one claps for it, even when there's no reward. That's how you know he's not doing it for approval. He's doing it because your peace has become his purpose, not in a way that erases him, but in a way that includes you. This is what it means when he puts you first. Not above himself in a way that breaks him, but beside himself in a way that builds you both. It's a shared space. It's a co-regulated love. It's not about who leads and who follows. It's about who looks out for whom, and he does it quietly with reverence, with care, because to him love isn't a stage, it's a sanctuary. So next time you feel that his quiet, consistent awareness of you, his reflex to consider you, his habit of placing you in the equation before he speaks or moves, honor it. That's not common. That's not casual. That's character. If this kind of presence resonates with you, if it reminded you of something you have, something you hope to find, like and comment number 1 below to let me know. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the final lessons in this series, because we're not done uncovering the real language of loyalty. 7, he answers questions without defensiveness. One of the most telling signs of a loyal man isn't in how he declares his trustworthiness, but in how he handles your curiosity. When a man is rooted in integrity, your questions don't rattle him. He doesn't flinch when you ask where he was, who he was with, or why he didn't respond right away. He responds not to defend, but to include. This isn't about being a people pleaser or trying to over-explain. It's about transparency. Without tension, when a man is loyal, he doesn't live in fear of being exposed because there's nothing he's covering up. His life is integrated. He's not living 2 versions of himself, one for you, one for the rest of the world. He doesn't compartmentalize his time, conversations, or relationships. So when you ask a question, it doesn't trigger guilt or panic. It just invites clarity. That's why this micro behavior is so powerful. It's quiet. It's easy to miss, but it speaks volumes. Think about how many times you've asked a simple question and been met with defensiveness, irritation, or accusations. Why are you asking me that? Don't you trust me? Those are responses not grounded in loyalty, but in fear. They deflect instead of connect. A loyal man doesn't do that. He receives your questions with calm because he has nothing to protect. He's not holding emotional secrets like a vault behind a steel door. His world is open even if his personality is private, because privacy and secrecy are not the same. Privacy is a boundary. Secrecy is a wall. And stoic men, true love, stoic men know the difference. They don't need to prove their worth through explanations, but they also don't hide behind silence. They offer answers, not because they owe you an account of every minute, but because they value peace over suspicion. When you love someone and you're loyal to them, peace becomes something you protect, and trust isn't built on the absence of questions. It's built on how those questions are answered slowly, kindly, clearly. This is how you know a man's loyalty is real. It's not just in what he does when things are going well. It's in how he stays regulated when you're not sure, when you're vulnerable, when you need reassurance. And it's not just about emotional maturity. It's about the way he lives. A man who isn't juggling other women, other stories, other lives. He doesn't freeze up when asked about something simple. He doesn't think, what did I say last time? He doesn't scroll through excuses or fabricate timelines. He just tells the truth calmly, not out of obligation, out of alignment. That's stoicism in love. No drama, no games, no ego, just clarity, just truth, just consistency. Imagine being with someone who doesn't turn your questions into conflict, who doesn't punish your need for understanding, who doesn't act like your curiosity is a burden. That's not just emotional safety, it's freedom. Because when a man is loyal, questions don't threaten him. They invite him to connect deeper, to show you not with perfection, but with presence, that he's someone who can be trusted. And you'll notice it in the little things. When he comes home and you ask how his day went, he tells you not the filtered version, the real one. When he's running late and you ask why, he gives you a real answer, not a vague excuse. And when something doesn't make sense and you call it out, he leans in instead of pulling away. This kind of man isn't trying to stay ahead of you. He's walking with you. There's no scoreboard, no checklist, just shared truth. And maybe you've never seen that before. Maybe you've been gaslighted, dismissed, told that your questions mean you're insecure. But the truth is, questions are part of closeness. They're part of intimacy. And a loyal man doesn't punish intimacy. He welcomes it because he's not afraid of being known. He wants you to know him, not just the version he posts online, the full story. And in turn, that makes you feel safe to be curious, to ask, to engage. It removes the fear that every inquiry will start a fight, and that freedom is what trust is made of. Love stoic men don't fear accountability. They walk in it. They don't use their masculinity as a wall. They use it as a bridge to meet your concerns, not crush them. They don't interrupt you with defensiveness. They listen. They understand. They respond. That's not weakness. That's security. And it's rare. It's rare to meet someone who doesn't crumble when questioned, who doesn't attack you for wanting to feel closer, who doesn't make you feel small for needing a little reassurance. That kind of calm is rare because it's real. It comes from a man who's not performing for your approval, but living in a way that earns your trust without having to chase it. So when you see this behavior, when your questions land gently, instead of exploding, know that you're in the presence of someone emotionally safe, someone who can hold space for your need to know, not because he's perfect, but because he's honest. And that honesty is the foundation for everything. You don't build a loyal relationship on silence. You build it on answers, on clarity, on willingness, on a mutual agreement that neither of you has to walk on eggshells. That's what this micro behavior unlocks. Not just transparency, but emotional equality. You get to ask, he gets to share. No one hides, no one hides, no one punishes, and what emerges is a bond that feels grounded. Stoic love is like that. It's not defensive, it's disciplined. It stays open, not because it's naive, but because it knows that connection is built through invitation, not interrogation. A man who answers your questions without defensiveness is inviting you into his world, one truth at a time. So now that you've seen them, the 7 subtle subconscious, easily missed yet deeply powerful micro behaviors of a loyal man. How many of them have you experienced? Or more importantly, how many have you been taught to overlook? We live in a culture that celebrates performance over presence, loud love over lasting love, and instant connection over real alignment. But the truth is, loyalty isn't always exciting at first glance. It's not always flashy or fiery. Often it's quiet, it's patient, it's made of choices, not noise. And when a man is truly loyal, his behavior doesn't need a script. It speaks for itself. You've learned that a loyal man doesn't just talk about commitment, he lives it in the way he mirrors your emotions, opens his digital life without fear, keeps you close even in conversations where you're not around, reads your silence, moves in rhythm with your well-being, places your safety above appearances, and answers your questions with calm clarity rather than defensiveness. These aren't just cute habits, they're blueprints. They're the deep architecture of a relationship. You can build something real on, and more than anything, they are signs that the man in front of you is not playing a role. He's standing in truth. If you've ever second-guessed what loyalty looks like, if you found yourself wondering whether your standards are too high or whether you're expecting too much, I hope this video reminded you, you were just trained to look for the wrong things. Loyalty doesn't need to shout. It shows up over and over again, not for praise, not for applause, but because that's who he is. And that's what makes love stoic men so rare and so real. They love with presence, with principle, with peace. If you felt seen by this video, if any of these micro behaviors made you stop and reflect, if something inside you softened or awakened, then you already know what to do. Like this video and comment number 1 to let me know it resonated with you. And if you want more content that unpacks how emotionally grounded men think, feel, love, and stay loyal, subscribe to this channel right now. We're just getting started. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your presence, your growth, and your heart. Here's to more clarity, more connection, and more courage in how you choose love. Stay wise, stay grounded, and as always, stay loyal to your standards. See you in the next one.